Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever driven through the Texas Panhandle at night? I mean, really driven through it? Not just passed through on your way somewhere else? There's something about that stretch of highway that makes you feel like you're the only person in the world. Miles of asphalt, wind, and such intense darkness that it presses against your windshield like a living thing. Wade Collier knew that feeling well. He'd been hauling freight in the Panhandle for 6 years, moving everything from refrigerated goods to construction equipment across the empty landscape between Amarillo and the New Mexico border. His truck was a 2015 Peterbilt 579, midnight blue with chrome accents, perfectly timed to catch the sunrise. He kept his truck clean, well-maintained, and reliable. In this line of work, your truck is your livelihood, and Wade treated his with respect. It was a Thursday night in late September when everything changed. Wade had picked up a load of agricultural equipment from a depot outside Amarillo around 6 p.m., destination a farming co-op near Tucumcari. Standard run, nothing special. The kind of haul he could do with his eyes half closed. The weather was clear, temperature dropping into the comfortable range as the sun dipped below the horizon. Perfect driving conditions. Wade pulled out of the depot, merged onto I-40 West, and settled into his usual rhythm. The radio played low, some classic rock station out of Amarillo that would fade to static in another hour or so. He had a thermos of coffee in the cup holder, still hot, and a bag of sunflower seeds within easy reach. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. Until it wasn't. Around 10:47 p.m., Wade was about 40 miles west of Amarillo, deep in the emptiest stretch of the Panhandle. No towns nearby, no rest stops, just the occasional ranch road disappearing into the darkness. The kind of place where you might not see another vehicle for 20 minutes or more. The highway stretched out before him like a ribbon of asphalt cutting through an ocean of black. That's when Wade first noticed the light. It wasn't like headlights approaching from the opposite direction. It wasn't like the distant glow of a town on the horizon. This light was directly ahead of him, maybe a quarter mile up the road, suspended about 30 feet above the highway. It was perfectly still, not moving, not swaying, just hanging there in the air like someone had stuck a floodlight to the sky and walked away. Wade's first thought was rational. Construction crew. Highway department doing some kind of night work. But even as he thought it, he knew it didn't make sense. There were no vehicles, no equipment, no workers. Just the light, bright and white and motionless, right in his path. He eased off the accelerator slightly, not alarmed yet, just curious. The speedometer dropped from 72 to 65. The light didn't change. It didn't flicker, didn't move, didn't do anything except exist in a place where nothing should be. "What the hell?" Wade muttered, leaning forward slightly, hands firm on the wheel. The road beneath the light looked normal. Asphalt, lane markers, shoulder, all exactly as it should be. But that light, it was wrong somehow. Too bright, too clean. Too perfectly white. Like looking at a star that had decided to stop in mid-sky and just watch. Wade checked his mirrors. Empty road behind him. He glanced at his GPS. The little arrow representing his truck moved steadily along the blue line of I-40. Nothing unusual there. His speedometer read 65. His odometer clicked over another tenth of a mile. Everything in his truck said the world was normal. But that light said otherwise. He was maybe 500 yards away now, close enough to see that the light wasn't pointing down at the highway like a spotlight. It was just there, ambient, surrounding, like a bubble of illumination floating in space, not emanating from any source he could identify. No pole, no aircraft, no structure, just light where light shouldn't be. Wade's heart rate picked up slightly. Not panic, not yet, just that primal human response to something that doesn't fit the pattern. His hands tightened on the wheel. He thought about the CB radio mounted on his dash, thought about calling out to see if any other drivers could see what he was seeing. But the channel had been quiet for the last hour. Dead air. Just static and the occasional distant burst of Spanish from a trucker somewhere far south. 300 yards now. The light was definitely above the highway, centered perfectly over the westbound lane. Wade had to make a decision, drive under it or pull over. Every instinct told him to stop, to get off the road, to wait and see what happened. But another part of his mind, the stubborn part that had kept him on schedule for 6 years, said it was probably nothing. Probably some atmospheric phenomenon. Probably explainable. Wade kept driving. 200 yards. The light grew larger in his windshield, filling his field of vision. It didn't hurt to look at, not like staring at a bulb or the sun. It was bright, but somehow soft, like moonlight amplified 1,000 times. The edges were crisp, defined, as if someone had drawn a circle of light in the air with a compass and ruler. 100 yards. Wade's truck rolled forward at 65 miles per hour. The engine purred smooth and steady. The tires hummed against the asphalt. Every gauge on his dash showed normal. Temperature normal, oil pressure normal, fuel normal. Everything normal except the impossible thing floating directly in front of him. 50 yards. Wade could see details now, or rather, he could see the lack of details. The light had no internal structure, no shadows, no variations in intensity. It was uniformly bright throughout, a perfect sphere of illumination hanging motionless above the road. No sound came from it. No hum, no buzz, no electrical crackle. Just silence and light. 25 yards. Wade's headlights passed underneath it. He could see the road ahead, clear and empty. His high beams cut through the darkness beyond the light, showing nothing but more highway stretching toward the horizon. Whatever this thing was, it was isolated, singular, alone. 10 yards. Wade held his breath without realizing it. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The light filled his windshield completely now. A wall of white that should have blinded him but somehow didn't. He could still see, still make out the edges, still track the lane markers beneath his wheels. 5 yards. Time seemed to slow. Wade was acutely aware of every detail. The rattle of the cargo in his trailer, the soft hiss of air through the vents, the creak of his seat as he shifted his weight. His eyes were locked on the light, waiting for something, anything to happen. And then he was under it. The light passed over his windshield like a physical thing, bright and all-encompassing. For maybe 2 seconds, Wade's entire world was white. Not blinding white, not painful white, just white. Pure, clean, absolute. He couldn't see the road, couldn't see his hood, couldn't see anything except that uniform, pristine illumination. He didn't let off the accelerator, didn't brake, didn't swerve. He just kept his hand steady and his foot constant, trusting his trajectory, trusting his decades of driving experience to keep him straight and centered. And then the light was behind him. Wade's eyes adjusted immediately. The road ahead was dark and normal, lit only by his headlights. He could see the center line, the shoulder, the darkness beyond. His mirrors showed the light receding behind him, still hanging motionless above the highway, exactly where it had been. Wade exhaled shakily. His heart was hammering now, adrenaline flooding his system in retrospect. He'd just driven under something that couldn't exist, something that defied every logical explanation he could think of, and he'd come out the other side unchanged. His truck was fine, he was fine, the road was fine, but something was wrong. Wade glanced at his clock. 10:51 p.m. He looked at his trip odometer. Then he looked at his GPS. Then he looked at the clock again, just to be sure. 10:51 p.m. But that couldn't be right. He'd first seen the light at 10:47. It had taken him maybe 3 or 4 minutes to reach it, drive under it, and pass it. It should be 10:50 or 10:51, sure. That made sense, except his GPS showed him 2 miles further west than he should be. 2 miles further than the distance he'd traveled at 65 miles per hour in 3 or 4 minutes would account for. And his trip odometer confirmed it. The numbers had jumped forward, a gap in the sequence that shouldn't exist. Wade's hands were shaking now. He pulled over onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under his tires as the big rig rolled to a stop. He put the transmission in neutral, set the parking brake, and just sat there, engine idling, staring at his instruments. 2 miles. Somehow, he'd lost 2 miles of road, or gained them, or skipped them. The math didn't work, the physics didn't work, nothing worked. He grabbed his CB radio handset, thumbed the talk button. "Breaker, breaker. This is Big Blue westbound on I-40. Anybody out there seeing weird lights?" His voice sounded hollow in his own ears, strained and uncertain. Static answered him. Pure, clean, static. No pops or crackles or distant voices. Just white noise, like the airwaves themselves had been scrubbed clean. Wade tried again. "Any drivers out there? This is westbound I-40, mile marker." He checked his GPS. "Mile marker 68. Anybody copy?" Nothing. The static didn't even change tone. It was as if every other truck, every other radio, every other human being with a transmitter had simply vanished from the world. Wade set the handset back in its cradle with a hand that wouldn't quite stop trembling. He looked in his mirrors, back toward where the light had been. The highway behind him was dark and empty. No light, no glow, no sign that anything unusual had ever been there. Just asphalt and darkness, and the faint red glow of his own taillights reflecting off nothing. He should call someone, his dispatcher maybe, or 911. Report what he'd seen. But report what exactly? That he'd driven under a light and lost 2 miles? That his radio wasn't working? That something impossible had happened and he had no proof except confused odometer readings and a gap in his memory? Because that's what was bothering him most now. Sitting in his parked truck with the engine idling and the night pressing against his windows. It wasn't just the missing miles. It was the missing time. He could remember seeing the light, driving toward it, going under it, coming out the other side. But the actual moment of passing beneath it, those 2 seconds of white, they were fuzzy, indistinct, like trying to remember a dream that fades as soon as you wake up. What had happened during those 2 seconds? What had happened during those 2 miles? Wade sat there for 5 more minutes, trying to decide what to do. Finally, he made his choice. Keep going. Finish the run, get to Tucumcari, drop the load, and figure things out in the morning. Maybe it was fatigue. Maybe his instruments had glitched. Maybe there was a rational explanation he just couldn't see right now. He released the parking brake, checked his mirrors, and pulled back onto the highway. The truck accelerated smoothly, everything mechanical and reliable. Within 30 seconds, he was back up to 65, rolling west through the darkness, trying to convince himself that everything was fine. But 40 miles ahead, at a rest stop Wade didn't know existed yet, someone else was about to see something impossible. And her night was just beginning. Raina Cruz had been working highway patrol in the Texas Panhandle for 3 years, and she thought she'd seen everything. Drunk drivers doing 90, drivers asleep at the wheel, vehicles held together with duct tape and prayer. She'd pulled over an RV once that was literally on fire. The driver completely oblivious to the flames shooting from the wheel well. She'd found a family of raccoons living in an abandoned sedan on the shoulder. She'd seen weird, and she'd seen dangerous, and she'd seen the weird, dangerous combination that made for the best dispatcher stories. But she'd never seen anything like the light. It was 11:03 p.m. when Raina pulled into the rest area at mile marker 71. Small place, barely a rest area at all, just a parking lot, a couple of bathrooms, and some vending machines behind security glass. This time of night it was usually empty, maybe one vehicle if she was unlucky. Tonight it was completely deserted, which suited her fine. She had paperwork to finish, reports to file, and the rest stop had decent lighting and Wi-Fi. She parked her patrol SUV under one of the overhead lights, killed the engine, and pulled out her laptop. The windows were cracked slightly, letting in the cool night air. Quiet. Peaceful. The kind of moment where the job felt almost relaxing. Raina had just opened her incident report software when her radio crackled. Not the normal crackle, not the pop and hiss of someone keying up to talk. This was different. This was wrong. The static had a pattern to it, almost rhythmic, like waves breaking on a shore. It rose and fell, pulsed and faded, in ways that random interference shouldn't behave. She reached for the radio, turned the volume knob down slightly. The static changed tone but didn't stop. If anything, it grew more pronounced, more structured. Raina could almost hear shapes in it, patterns, like someone was trying to transmit through a filter that scrambled everything into noise. "This is Unit 7. Anybody reading?" She kept her voice professional, calm. "Dispatch, you copy?" The static answered, that was all. No voice, no confirmation, no squelch break. Just that weird, patterned noise that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Raina checked her phone. Full signal, 5 bars, connected to the rest area's Wi-Fi booster. Internet worked fine, but her radio, the one that had never failed her in 3 years, was spitting nonsense into her ear. She tried again. "Unit 7 to any unit. Radio check, please." Nothing. The static continued its strange rhythm, rise and fall, pulse and fade. Raina felt a knot forming in her stomach. That cop instinct that said something was wrong, something was off. Pay attention because the world just tilted slightly on its axis. She reached for her phone, thinking she'd call dispatch directly, when the static abruptly stopped. Complete silence. Not even the background hiss of an open channel. The radio had simply quit. Raina stared at it for a moment, then keyed the mic again. "Unit 7, radio check." Dead air. She switched channels, tried again. Dead air. Switched back to the main channel. Dead air. Her radio was completely silent. "What the hell?" Raina muttered. She checked the power light, still green, still on. She checked the squelch, properly set. She checked the volume, turned up now, but producing no sound whatsoever. The radio was on, connected, and completely dead. That's when she saw the light. It was to the west, visible through her windshield, maybe a mile up the highway. Raina's first thought was vehicle fire, something burning on the shoulder, bright enough to light up the sky. But even as she thought it, she knew it was wrong. This light wasn't flickering or moving. It was steady, constant, suspended above the highway like a miniature sun. Raina grabbed her binoculars from the passenger seat, brought them up to her eyes. The image jumped into focus, a sphere of white light perfectly round, hanging motionless over the westbound lane of I-40. No source, no structure, no vehicle beneath it. Just light where light had no business being. "Okay," Raina said to herself, trying to keep calm. Okay, that's not normal. She grabbed her phone, pulled up her patrol log app, and started documenting. Time, 11:06 p.m. Location, rest area, mile marker 71. Observation, unidentified light source approximately 1 mile west, suspended above highway. No apparent vehicle or structure. She took several photos through her windshield, knowing they probably wouldn't capture anything useful in the darkness, but documenting anyway. Training and procedure. When something doesn't make sense, write it down. The light didn't change. It didn't move, didn't fade, didn't do anything except float there, bright and impossible and wrong. Raina made a decision. She started her SUV, pulled out of the rest area, and headed west on I-40, toward the light. If there was some kind of incident, some kind of emergency, she needed to respond. That was the job, even if the light made no sense, even if her radio was dead, even if every instinct told her to turn around and call for backup, she had a responsibility to investigate. The SUV accelerated smoothly. 60 miles per hour, 65, 70. The light grew larger in her windshield, closer and brighter, but still maintaining that impossible stillness. As she drove, Raina tried her radio again. Still dead. She tried her phone, still working, but who would she call? What would she say? Hello, dispatch. There's a floating light, please advise. A half mile now. The light was clearly visible, clearly wrong. Raina could see it had definite edges, a boundary where the light stopped and the darkness began. It wasn't spreading or diffusing like normal light should. It was contained, localized, as if someone had carved out a sphere of brightness and left it hanging in midair. Quarter mile. Raina slowed down, not sure she wanted to get much closer. This was outside her training, outside her experience, outside the normal parameters of highway patrol incidents. Lights didn't just float in the sky. Radios didn't just die for no reason. Something was happening here, something she didn't understand and wasn't sure she wanted to. She was reaching for her radio again, instinctively trying one more time despite knowing it was dead, when she saw the truck. It was maybe 200 yards ahead, westbound lane, rolling at normal highway speed directly toward the light. Big rig, sleeper cab, dark paint she couldn't make out in the darkness. It didn't appear to be slowing down, didn't appear to be reacting to the light at all. It just kept rolling forward, steady and straight, like the driver either couldn't see the impossible thing in front of him or didn't care. No, 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 Raina breathed, accelerating again. She needed to warn them, needed to stop them, needed to do something before that truck drove right under the truck reached the light. For maybe 3 seconds, Raina couldn't see it anymore. The bright glow swallowed the entire vehicle, cab and trailer both, consuming it in that uniform white illumination. She kept her eyes locked on the spot, hands tight on her wheel, waiting for the truck to emerge on the other side. It did. The truck rolled out from under the light, apparently undamaged, apparently fine, and just kept going. Westbound, steady speed, as if nothing had happened. The light remained where it was, perfectly still, perfectly bright, as if a 50,000-pound vehicle hadn't just passed directly beneath it. Raina grabbed her radio handset without thinking. Westbound truck, this is Texas Highway Patrol, please respond. Dead air. She tried again. Westbound 18-wheeler, this is patrol unit, do you copy? Nothing. Her radio was still completely dead. She tried the CB instead, the civilian band she kept tuned to Channel 19 for emergencies. Westbound truck, this is Highway Patrol. Can you hear me on the CB? Static answered her. Not the strange patterned static from before, just normal white noise. The CB was working, at least, but no one answered. Reyna was less than 100 yards from the light now. She could see it in detail, see the way it illuminated the highway beneath it, casting sharp shadows from the lane markers and making the asphalt look almost silver. She could see the edges were knife-sharp, not fuzzy or gradual like normal light. She could see there was absolutely nothing physical holding it up. No wires or poles or aircraft or anything. It was just there, suspended, impossible. She slowed to 40 miles per hour, 30, 20. The light loomed ahead of her, growing to fill her entire windshield. She should stop. She should turn around. She should do literally anything except continue forward towards something that violated every law of physics she'd ever learned. But that truck had driven through and emerged fine. Whatever this thing was, it apparently wasn't immediately dangerous. And she was highway patrol. Investigation was literally her job description. Reyna drove forward at 15 miles per hour, crawling now, giving herself maximum time to react if anything changed. The light grew closer. 50 yards, 25, 10. She could feel her heart pounding, could hear the blood rushing in her ears. Every nerve ending was screaming at her to stop, turn around, run. But she kept going. 5 yards. The light filled her vision completely now, bright enough that she had to squint slightly. Her hands were locked on the wheel, her foot steady on the accelerator. Just a few more seconds and she'd be under it, through it, past it. And this whole insane night could be documented and explained by someone way above her pay grade. 3 yards, 2, 1. The light swallowed her vehicle. For a moment that seemed to last forever and no time at all, Reyna existed in a space of pure white. Not the inside of her SUV anymore. Not the highway. Not Texas. Just white. Clean and bright and absolute. She couldn't see her hood. Couldn't see her dashboard. Couldn't see her hands on the wheel. Everything was white. And then it was over. Reyna emerged on the west side of the light, her SUV rolling smoothly forward, everything apparently normal. The highway stretched ahead of her, dark and empty. Her dashboard showed normal. Her speedometer showed 15 miles per hour. Everything was fine, except her clock was wrong. Reyna stared at the display, 11:09 p.m. But that couldn't be right. She'd entered the rest area at 11:03, spotted the light at 11:06, driven toward it for maybe 2 minutes. It should be 11:08 at the latest, but 3 minutes weren't missing. They were extra or different, or wrong somehow in a way her brain couldn't quite process. She checked her phone. 11:09 p.m., same time. So her vehicle clock wasn't malfunctioning. Time had just skipped. Or something had happened that made the normal flow of seconds and minutes stop making sense. Reyna looked in her rearview mirror. The light was still there, visible in the distance, hanging motionless above the highway. Still bright, still impossible, still wrong. Her radio crackled suddenly, startling her. Not the weird patterned static from before. Normal static, the familiar background hiss of an open channel. "Reading me? Unit 7, this is dispatch, please respond." Reyna grabbed the handset so fast she nearly dropped it. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I copy, please repeat your last." "Unit 7. We lost you there for a few minutes, everything okay?" Reyna paused, trying to find words for what had just happened. "Dispatch, I'm westbound I-40, mile marker 70. I just witnessed an unidentified aerial object. Bright light, stationary position above the highway. Requesting backup and supervisor notification." There was a pause. Then, "Unit 7, confirm you said aerial object?" "Affirmative, dispatch. Stationary light source, no visible structure or support, positioned directly over the roadway." I drove beneath it approximately 2 minutes ago. No damage or apparent danger, but I'm requesting immediate supervisor contact and possible FAA notification. Another pause. Longer this time. Raina could almost hear the dispatcher trying to figure out how to classify this. Finally, copy that, Unit 7. Stand by for supervisor contact. In the meantime, can you maintain visual on the object? Raina looked in her mirror again. The light was still there, still bright, still exactly where it had been. Affirmative, dispatch. Visual contact maintained. Copy. Unit 3 is en route to your location. ETA 15 minutes. Sit tight. 10-4, dispatch. Raina pulled over onto the shoulder, put her SUV in park and kept her eyes on the mirror. 15 minutes. 15 minutes until another officer arrived and could confirm she wasn't losing her mind. But even as she waited, even as she documented and photographed and tried to make sense of what had happened, one thought kept circling in her mind. That truck had driven through the light before her. Somewhere ahead on this highway, a driver was continuing their route, probably confused and scared and wondering if anyone would believe them. She grabbed her computer, pulled up the traffic camera system. If she could get a plate number, maybe track down the driver, compare stories. But the cameras were offline, all of them. Every single traffic monitoring station between Amarillo and the New Mexico border was showing static or no signal, as if something had scrubbed the entire surveillance network clean. Raina sat in her patrol SUV on the shoulder of I-40, watching an impossible light in her mirror, and wondered if anyone would ever believe a word of this report. Wade made it to Tucumcari at 12:47 a.m., almost 40 minutes behind schedule. The co-op was closed, of course, so he parked his rig in the overnight lot and sat in the cab, staring at nothing, trying to process what had happened. 2 miles, 2 minutes, 2 seconds of white light that didn't exist. He'd tried calling his dispatcher 3 times during the drive. Every time the call had connected, but all he heard was silence on the other end. No voice, no ring, no indication that anything was happening. Just empty air where sound should be. He'd hung up, tried again. Same result. By the 3rd attempt, he'd given up. His CB had come back to life about 20 minutes after he'd passed under the light. Suddenly, without warning, the static had resolved into voices. Other drivers chatting about loads and routes and truck stops with good coffee. Wade had tried to break in, tried to ask if anyone else had seen anything unusual, but every time he keyed the mic, the conversation stopped. Dead air for 5 seconds, 10, then the voices would resume as if he hadn't spoken at all. After the 4th attempt, he'd stopped trying. Now he sat in the parking lot, engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal, and tried to convince himself he wasn't losing his mind. Everything in his truck said something impossible had happened. The gap in his odometer, the missing time on his clock, the radio silence that had lasted exactly as long as it took him to move out of sight of the light. Wade pulled out his phone and did something he'd been avoiding. He searched for floating light Texas highway. The results were concerning, not because there was nothing, but because there was too much. Dozens of reports, hundreds maybe, scattered across forums and local news sites and conspiracy blogs. Lights appearing over highways, usually at night, usually in remote areas. Witnesses described exactly what he'd seen. Bright, white, perfectly round, absolutely motionless. Some reports mentioned missing time. Some mentioned radio interference. Some mentioned the feeling of being watched, of being measured, of being found somehow inadequate or interesting in ways they couldn't articulate. Wade set his phone down, feeling his hands shake slightly. He wasn't crazy, or if he was, he had a lot of company. He should report this. Call someone official. Highway Patrol, FAA, maybe that number for reporting UFOs he'd heard about once. But what would he say? I drove under a light and my clock jumped forward 2 minutes. He had no photos, no video, no proof except his own confused recollection and instrument readings that could be explained 100 different ways. And even if he did report it, what then? He'd be the crazy truck driver who saw UFOs. He'd be the guy other drivers joked about at truck stops. His dispatcher would look at him differently. His family would worry. For what? To add one more unverifiable report to a pile that obviously wasn't being investigated anyway. Wade made his decision. He wouldn't report it. He'd finish his route, go home, try to forget it happened. Maybe it was atmospheric phenomenon. Maybe it was military testing. Maybe it was something he couldn't explain, but that didn't mean he needed to explain it to everyone else. He climbed into his sleeper berth, set an alarm for 7 a.m., and tried to sleep. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw that white light, pure and impossible and patient, hanging above the highway like it was waiting for something. Like it was waiting for him. 40 miles east, Raina was still sitting in her patrol SUV, watching the light in her mirror. Unit 3 had arrived 20 minutes ago. A veteran patrol officer named Martinez who'd taken one look at the light through his binoculars and gone very quiet. "How long has it been there?" Martinez asked, his voice carefully neutral. "I first saw it at 11:06, Raina said. "It's been stationary the entire time, hasn't moved, hasn't changed brightness, hasn't done anything." Martinez lowered the binoculars. "And you drove under it?" "Yes, sir. No damage, no injury, no apparent effect except..." She gestured at her dash. "My clock jumped forward, maybe 3 minutes, and my radio was completely dead until after I passed through." Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then, "My radio's working fine now. Are you getting dispatch?" Raina keyed her mic. "Unit 7 to dispatch, radio check." "Dispatch copies, Unit 7, loud and clear." "Copy that." Raina looked at Martinez. "Working now." "How far away would you say that light is?" Martinez asked. "Maybe a mile and a half. Why?" Martinez pulled out his own radio, changed to a different channel. "Unit 3 to Unit 7, can you copy on this channel?" Raina's radio immediately squelched. "Unit 7 copies." "Stay on this channel. I'm going to drive toward the light. Let me know if I break up or lose signal." "You're going to drive toward it?" Raina felt a spike of anxiety. "Sir, I don't think that's... I'll stop before I get too close. I just want to test something." Martinez climbed into his SUV before Raina could argue further. She watched in her mirror as Unit 3 pulled onto the highway, heading west, back toward the light. Martinez maintained a steady pace, maybe 40 miles per hour, narrating as he went. Unit 3 approaching the object, current distance approximately 1 mile. "Copy that, Unit 3, signal is clear." Distance approximately 3/4 of a mile, no change in object appearance. "Still copying clear, Unit 3. Distance half a mile. Object remains stationary. Wait, my radio just... Static cut across the channel, sharp and sudden. "Unit 3, repeat your last. You're breaking up." More static than nothing. Complete silence. Raina watched Martinez's SUV continue forward, closer to the light, and felt her stomach knot. She grabbed her handset. "Unit 3, please respond. Martinez, can you hear me?" Dead air. The channel was completely silent. Raina could see Martinez's vehicle clearly, still moving, still apparently under control. But all radio contact was gone, exactly like what had happened to her. She should drive after him. She should try to stop him. But even as she thought it, she saw Martinez's SUV slow down, stop on the shoulder maybe a 1/4 mile from the light. The driver's door opened, Martinez stepped out, and he just stood there for a moment, looking up at the impossible thing floating above the highway. Then he got back in his SUV, turned around, and started driving back toward Reyna's position. As soon as he did, his voice came back on the radio, mid-sentence like he'd never stopped transmitting. About 500 yards before complete radio failure. Unit 7, did you copy any of that? Negative, Unit 3, we lost you as soon as you got within approximately half a mile. Welcome back. Martinez pulled up alongside Reyna's position, rolled down his window. His face was pale in the overhead lights, his expression somewhere between fascinated and terrified. Okay, he said. So, that's real. That's actually real. Yes, sir. And we just lost all radio contact within a specific radius of that thing. Yes, sir. Martinez looked back toward the light, still visible in the distance, still hanging motionless above the highway. I need to call this in, not to dispatch, higher up. This is way outside normal patrol parameters. Sir, I already requested supervisor notification, not the supervisor, Martinez interrupted. Higher, federal, this is... He paused, searching for words. This is beyond us, Cruz. This is way beyond us. He made 2 phone calls over the next 15 minutes, his voice low and urgent. Reyna couldn't hear the details, but she caught phrases. Unidentified aerial phenomenon. Radio interference radius. Recommend immediate FAA contact. While he talked, Reyna kept watching the light. It hadn't changed, hadn't moved, hadn't done anything except exist where it shouldn't, breaking physics and challenging reality by simply being there. And then, at exactly 12:33 a.m., it disappeared. Not gradually, not fading out or dimming. One moment it was there, bright and impossible. The next moment it was gone, and the highway was dark and empty, and normal again. Reyna and Martinez stared at the empty space where the light had been. Did you... Reyna started. Yeah, Martinez said. I saw it. They drove to the spot where the light had been hovering, half expecting to find some kind of residue or evidence or mark, but there was nothing. Just normal asphalt, normal lane markers, normal highway. The road wasn't even warm, despite being under intense light for over an hour. By 1:15 a.m., Reyna was back at the rest area writing her incident report. She documented everything she could remember. Times, locations, observations, radio failures, the truck that had passed through before her. She attached photos and GPS coordinates and every technical detail she could think of. When she submitted it, the system flagged it for immediate supervisor review. Then federal review. Then it disappeared into whatever black hole the government kept for reports nobody wanted to acknowledge. 3 days later, Reyna received a call from someone who identified themselves as Department of Defense liaison. They asked her to clarify several details in her report. They asked if she'd experienced any medical effects. They asked if she'd be willing to undergo an interview and examination. She agreed to all of it. But at the end of the call, the liaison said something that stuck with her. Officer Cruz, you're not the first person to report this phenomenon in the Panhandle area, and, unfortunately, you probably won't be the last. We're documenting these incidents, but I need you to understand. We don't have answers yet. We're still trying to figure out what's happening out there. Reyna hung up and sat in her quiet apartment, thinking about that light, that impossible sphere of white that existed where nothing should exist. And she thought about the truck driver, whoever they were, who'd passed through before her. Were they getting calls from DoD liaisons too? Were they writing reports that vanished into government databases? Were they lying awake at night wondering if they'd imagined it all? She hoped they were okay. She hoped they'd made it to wherever they were going. She hoped the light, whatever it was, hadn't followed them home. Wade never got a call from the Department of Defense. His report was never filed, because he never filed one. He finished his route, went home to his apartment in Amarillo, and tried to forget about that night. But he couldn't. Every time he ran freight through the Panhandle, he found himself watching the sky. Every time his clock hit 10:47 p.m., he tensed up, waiting for something to appear. Every time his radio went silent, even for a second, his heart rate spiked. Nothing happened. The light never came back. His routes were normal, his hauls were routine, everything was fine. Until 6 weeks later, when he was westbound on I-40 at 10:47 p.m., and he saw it again. The same light, the same location, the same impossible sphere of white hanging motionless above the highway. This time, Wade didn't drive through it. This time, he pulled over, grabbed his phone, and took video. Clear, steady video of the light, lasting for 4 minutes and 33 seconds before the light vanished exactly like it had before, instantaneously leaving no trace. Wade posted the video online, anonymously, with no context and no commentary. Within 2 hours, it had 10,000 views. Within a day, 100,000. Within a week, over 1 million people had watched a truck driver's shaky phone footage of something that shouldn't exist. Some people called it fake. Some called it a hoax. Some called it atmospheric phenomenon or military testing or reflections, or Venus or swamp gas or mass hallucination. But other people who'd been there, people who'd seen the light themselves, they recognized it immediately, and they started talking. Truck drivers, highway patrol, late-night travelers. Stories poured in, dozens of them, then hundreds, all describing the same thing: the suspended light, perfectly white, perfectly still, appearing without warning and vanishing without trace. The reports came from Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Kansas. Always highways, always at night, always remote locations, always the same impossible phenomenon that defied explanation. And in every single report, people mentioned the time: 2 minutes. Whether measured by clocks or odometers or GPS systems, everyone who passed through the light lost exactly 2 minutes. Not 1 minute, not 3, always 2. As if whatever the light was, it operated on a specific timeline that had nothing to do with human measurement of seconds and hours. Researchers tried to study it. They set up monitoring stations. They placed cameras along the highways. They tried to predict where and when the light would appear next. It didn't help. The light appeared when it wanted, where it wanted, stayed for however long it wanted, and vanished without warning. No pattern, no schedule, no logic to its appearances. Just random manifestations of something impossible, challenging reality one highway at a time. Wade still drives freight through the Panhandle. He's seen the light 3 more times since that first night, though never again at the same location. Each time, he documents it. Each time, he reports it to online databases and research groups. Each time, he hopes someone smarter than him can figure out what's happening. But so far, no one has. The suspended light remains a mystery, a phenomenon that exists in the gap between what we know and what we can't explain. Raina transferred to a different patrol district 6 months after her encounter. Not because she was scared, she told herself, but because the opportunity arose and the timing was right. She still checks the UFO reporting databases sometimes, still reads the accounts from other officers who've seen the light. She knows Wade's story, though she doesn't know it's Wade's story specifically. She knows about the truck driver who filmed it, whose video went viral, whose experience matched hers almost exactly. She's thought about reaching out, comparing notes, maybe even meeting. But what would be the point? What could they tell each other that they didn't already know? The light exists. It's real. It does something to time and radio waves and the people who pass through it. And despite all the documentation, all the video evidence, all the witness testimony, nobody has any idea what it is, where it comes from, or what it wants, if it wants anything at all. Some nights, when Wade is driving through the Panhandle and the highway is dark and empty, he thinks about that moment under the light. Those 2 seconds of pure white. What happened during that time? What did he see that his memory won't let him keep? What changed in those missing minutes that his instruments measured but his brain can't recall? He doesn't have answers. He's not sure he wants answers. Because whatever the truth is, whatever that light really represents, it's been appearing on these highways for at least 3 years, based on the online reports, and probably much longer before people started documenting it. 3 years of random appearances, 3 years of confused witnesses, 3 years of unexplained phenomena that the government acknowledges but can't explain. And in all that time, the light has never hurt anyone. It's never caused accidents or injuries or deaths. It just appears, exists, and vanishes, taking 2 minutes with it every time someone passes through. Maybe it's watching. Maybe it's studying. Maybe it's doing something so far outside human comprehension that we can't even ask the right questions. Or maybe it's just there, a glitch in reality, a crack in the universe that lets something else peek through for a few minutes at a time. Wade doesn't know. Raina doesn't know. Nobody knows. But they keep watching the sky anyway because once you've seen something impossible, you can never quite stop looking for it again. The last time Wade saw the light was 3 weeks ago. Same highway, different location, 11:23 p.m. He didn't drive through it this time. He pulled over, grabbed his binoculars, and just watched. The light hung there for 8 minutes. Then it flickered once, just once, the first time Wade had ever seen it change or move or do anything except exist. And in that flicker, just for a fraction of a second, Wade thought he saw something inside the light. A shape, a structure. Something geometric and strange and utterly alien. Then the light was gone and the highway was dark, and Wade was left with a memory that might have been real, or might have been imagination, or might have been something in between. He didn't take video. He didn't tell anyone. He just sat there in his parked truck, staring at the empty space where the light had been, and wondered if that flicker was intentional. If the light, whatever it was, had wanted him to see something, a hint, a clue, a message in a language he didn't speak but somehow understood on a level below conscious thought. The message was simple. We're here. We've always been here, and we're not leaving. Wade started his truck, pulled back onto the highway, and continued west into the darkness. The night closed around him, vast and empty and full of things that couldn't exist but did anyway. Somewhere behind him, the light would appear again. Tomorrow, next week, next month. Same phenomenon, different witness. Always moving, always changing location, always leaving people confused and scared and changed in ways they couldn't quite articulate. The suspended light wasn't done with the Panhandle. It wasn't done with the highways. It wasn't done with the people who traveled those dark roads in the quiet hours when most of humanity was asleep. It had time. It had patience. It had all the miles in the world, and all the moments between heartbeats, and all the space between stars. And it was waiting. For what, nobody knew. But it was waiting. And sometimes, late at night, when the highway is empty, and the sky is dark, and the only sound is the hum of tires on asphalt, you might see it. A light, perfectly white, perfectly round, perfectly still, suspended above the highway like a question that nobody knows how to answer. If you see it, you have a choice: drive through or turn around. Wade drove through. Raina drove through. Hundreds of others have driven through. They all came out changed. Not physically, not obviously, but in some small, fundamental way that makes the dark a little darker, the night a little longer, and the space above the highway a little less empty than it used to be. Because now they know we're not alone out there. Something is watching. Something is waiting. Something is hovering just above the threshold of our understanding, close enough to see, but too far to touch. And someday, maybe soon, maybe in 100 years, it will stop just watching. It will do something else. And when that happens, every person who drove through the light, every person who felt those 2 missing minutes, every person who saw the impossible and kept driving anyway, they'll remember. They'll remember the suspended light, and they'll understand that it was never random. It was always a test, and we're still being graded. Grant Reddick had been working highway patrol in the Texas Panhandle for 8 years, and he thought he'd seen every kind of vehicle breakdown imaginable. Cars overheated in the summer sun. Transmissions failed on elderly sedans. Tires blew out at 70 miles per hour. He'd seen engines seize, fuel lines clog, and electrical systems die for no apparent reason. In 8 years, he'd pulled over behind hundreds of disabled vehicles, helped push dozens off the road, and called for tow trucks more times than he could count. But he'd never seen anything like this. It was 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in early October. Grant was northbound on Highway 207, about 30 miles south of the Oklahoma border. Dead, empty road, the kind where you could see headlights coming from 5 miles away. No towns nearby, no ranches with lights on, just flat prairie stretching in every direction under a moonless sky. The kind of shift where the biggest excitement was usually a speeding semi trying to make up time. Grant's patrol SUV hummed smoothly along the highway at 65 miles per hour. His radio played soft country music, barely audible over the engine noise. His coffee was cold in the cup holder, but he didn't care. Only 3 more hours until shift change, and then he could go home, sleep for 6 hours, and do it all again. That's when his headlights caught something ahead. A big rig sitting dead center in the northbound lane, not on the shoulder, not partially pulled over. Right in the middle of the lane, as if the driver had just stopped mid-journey and walked away. Grant's training kicked in immediately. He flipped on his light bar, the red and blue strobes cutting through the darkness. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got a disabled 18-wheeler northbound 207, approximately mile marker 43. Appears to be blocking the travel lane, no hazard lights visible. Requesting status on any prior calls." "Copy, Unit 12. Negative on prior calls for that location. Can you provide vehicle description?" Grant squinted at the truck as he approached, slowing to 30 miles per hour. Appears to be a Freightliner, dark paint, can't make out the color. Sleeper cab, standard trailer, no company markings visible. Stand by while I make contact. 10-4, Unit 12. Be advised, nearest backup is Unit 6, currently 40 minutes south of your location. Copy that. Grant pulled up behind the truck, positioning his SUV at an angle with the light bar fully illuminated. The strobes painted the back of the trailer in alternating red and blue, but there was no movement, no indication anyone was inside. Grant sat for a moment, observing. The truck's brake lights weren't on. No hazard flashers, no running lights. The trailer looked intact, no visible damage. But something felt wrong. In 8 years, Grant had developed an instinct for situations that didn't add up, and this one was setting off every alarm bell in his head. He grabbed his flashlight, the heavy mag light that had been issued to him on his first day, and stepped out of his SUV. The night air was cool, probably low 50s, with a dry wind that smelled like dust and distance. His boots crunched on the asphalt as he approached the truck from the driver's side, flashlight up, free hand near his sidearm. "Highway Patrol," Grant called out. "Driver, can you hear me?" No response. The wind pushed against him, strong enough to flutter his uniform jacket. Grant walked alongside the trailer, checking for damage, checking for cargo issues, checking for anything that might explain why this truck was parked in the middle of a highway at 2 a.m. with no lights and no driver response. Nothing. The trailer was sealed, locked, apparently fine. Grant continued forward to the cab. "Driver, this is Texas Highway Patrol. I need you to respond if you can hear me." Still nothing. Grant reached the cab door, shined his flashlight through the window. The interior was dark, empty. No driver in the seat. No sleeping form in the berth visible through the curtain. Just an empty truck sitting in the middle of the highway like someone had parked it there and vanished. Grant tried the door handle. Locked. He moved around to the passenger side, tried that door. Also locked. Both doors secure, no signs of forced entry, no broken windows. The truck was sealed up tight, completely unoccupied, sitting in a travel lane with the engine off. "Dispatch, Unit 12. Vehicle is unoccupied, both doors locked, no signs of distress or emergency. Running the plate now." Grant walked back around to the rear of the trailer, pulled out his notebook, and copied down the license plate number. Texas commercial plates, current registration sticker. Everything appeared legitimate. He called the number into dispatch and waited for the response. While he waited, Grant walked a perimeter around the truck, looking for anything unusual. Tire tracks on the shoulder that might indicate the driver had pulled off and walked away. Fluid leaks that might suggest mechanical failure. Anything that could explain this situation. He found nothing. The truck sat on properly inflated tires, no visible leaks, no damage. It was as if someone had been driving normally, then simply stopped in the middle of the road and disappeared. Unit 12 dispatch. Plate comes back to Mays Freight Services, registered to Sierra Mays out of Lubbock. Vehicle status shows active, no wants or warrants, no flags. Do you want us to attempt contact with the registered owner? Grant checked his watch. 2:24 a.m. Affirmative dispatch. Also requesting heavy-duty tow to this location. We need to get this vehicle off the roadway. Copy. Contacting owner and tow service. Stand by. Grant walked back to his SUV, grabbed his road flares and started setting up a safety perimeter. He placed flares 100 yards south of the truck, spaced across both lanes to warn any approaching traffic. Not that there was much chance of traffic at this hour, but procedure was procedure. As he worked, Grant kept glancing at the truck. It bothered him. Everything about this bothered him. In his experience, disabled vehicles didn't just appear in the middle of highways. Drivers didn't just abandon their rigs without calling for help. And they definitely didn't lock everything up and vanish without a trace. His radio crackled. "Unit 12, we've made contact with the registered owner. Sierra Mays states she's currently with the vehicle. Says she's been trying to get the engine started for the past 20 minutes. Grant froze, flare in hand. "Dispatch, repeat that. The owner says she's with the vehicle." Affirmative, Unit 12. "She's asking for assistance with a mechanical issue." Grant looked at the empty truck, dark and silent in the glow of his light bar. "Dispatch, negative. The vehicle is completely unoccupied. I've checked both doors, looked through all windows. There is no one in this truck." A pause, then, "Unit 12, stand by. Re-establishing contact with the owner." Grant walked back to the truck, more urgently now. He tried both doors again, checking to make absolutely sure he hadn't missed something. Still locked, still empty. He cupped his hands against the windows, using his flashlight to illuminate every corner of the cab. No one. Dispatch Unit 12. Can confirm vehicle is unoccupied, requesting clarification on owner location. Unit 12. Owner states she's in the cab of the truck, northbound 207, approximately mile marker 43. She sounds confused. Says she can see patrol lights but doesn't see an officer. A cold feeling settled in Grant's stomach. He keyed his radio. Tell her to turn on her hazard flashers. Stand by. A moment later, Unit 12. Owner says her electrical system isn't responding. No lights, no radio, no dash illumination. She's trying to signal with her flashlight. Grant stared at the dark cab. No flashlight beam, no movement, nothing. He walked around to the driver's side again, pounded on the door with his fist. "Ma'am, Highway Patrol, if you can hear me, make some noise." Silence. The wind pushed against him, cold and insistent. "Dispatch, I'm not getting any response here. No flashlight visible, no noise, nothing. Are you certain you're speaking with the owner of this vehicle?" Unit 12, caller ID, matches the registered phone number for Sierra Mays. She's insisting she's in the truck and needs assistance. "Dispatch, I need you to ask her something specific. Ask her what she can see right now." Another pause, then, Unit 12. She says she can see patrol lights behind her, red and blue, but the officer isn't approaching. She says she's been waiting for someone to help her for... The dispatcher paused. She says she's been waiting for over an hour. Grant checked his watch. 2:28 a.m. He'd been on scene for 11 minutes. "Dispatch, I've been here less than 15 minutes. Something's not adding up." Unit 12. Recommend we attempt video call to verify situation. Agreed. Have her call me directly. Grant gave his cell phone number, then waited, staring at the empty truck. His phone rang 30 seconds later. He answered it. "This is Patrol Officer Reddick. Ms. Mays?" "Oh, thank God." The voice was female, young, stressed. "Officer, I've been trying to flag you down, but you're just sitting in your vehicle. I need help. My engine won't start and my phone barely has signal and... Ma'am, I need you to slow down. Where exactly are you right now?" "I'm in my truck, on Highway 207. I told the dispatcher, Ms. Mays, I'm standing next to your truck right now. The cab is empty." Silence on the line. Then, "What? No, I'm right here. I'm sitting in the driver's seat. I can see your lights in my mirror." Grant felt his skin prickle. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. Can you turn on your video camera? My phone's at like 3% battery, but okay, hold on." Rustling sounds, then, "Okay, video's on." Grant's phone screen flickered, then showed a grainy video feed. The image was dark but recognizable. The interior of a truck cab, dimly illuminated by what looked like a small flashlight. He could see the steering wheel, the dashboard, the curtained sleeper berth in the background. And sitting in the driver's seat, phone held up in a shaking hand, was a woman in her late 20s or early 30s. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans. "Ms. Mays, I can see you on video. You're definitely in a truck. But ma'am, I need you to understand. The truck I'm standing next to is completely empty." "That's impossible. I'm looking right at your lights. You're maybe 50 feet behind me." Grant panned his phone camera around, showing her the empty cab, the locked doors, the dark interior. "Ms. Mays, this is what I'm seeing. There's no one in this truck." On his phone screen, he saw Sierra's face go pale. Her voice came through tight and scared. "Officer, I don't understand what's happening. I can see you. Your vehicle is right behind me. Red and blue lights. But you're saying you can't see me." "That's correct, ma'am. I can see you on video, but your physical truck appears to be empty." Sierra's breath hitched. "This isn't funny. This isn't—" She stopped abruptly. "Wait, officer, do you hear that?" Grant listened. Wind, distant highway hum, his own breathing. "Hear what, ma'am?" "That sound, that humming. You don't hear it?" "Negative." "Ms. Mays, I need you to stay calm. Can you tell me what time it is on your dashboard clock?" Sierra aimed her phone at the dash. The screen was completely dark. "My electronics are all dead. My phone says it's 1:37 a.m. Grant's blood went cold. "Ma'am, it's 2:31 a.m. That's not possible. I've been sitting here maybe 20 minutes, half an hour tops. I stopped because my engine died around 1:15. I tried to restart it, couldn't. Called dispatch around 1:20. I've been waiting since then." Nearly an hour. She thought she'd been sitting there for 30 minutes, but she'd been there for over an hour. And Grant had been on scene for 15 minutes, but she thought he'd been there longer. Time wasn't adding up. Nothing was adding up. "Ms. Mays, listen to me carefully. I need you to try starting your engine again. Can you do that?" "I've tried like 20 times. It won't turn over." "Try one more time. For me." On the video feed, Grant watched Sierra put her phone down on the passenger seat, still aimed at her. He heard her insert the key, turn it. The starter motor should have engaged, should have made that distinctive grinding noise as it tried to turn the engine over. Nothing. Complete silence. Not even a click. But Grant was standing right next to the truck. He should have heard something. Any attempt to start the engine should have been audible from where he stood, but the truck remained completely silent. Sierra picked up her phone again. Her face was tight with fear now. "It's not doing anything, not even clicking. It's like the battery's completely dead, but my battery's only 6 months old and it was fine when I stopped." "Your lights aren't working either." "Nothing's working. When the engine died, everything died. Dash lights, running lights, everything. Just went dark all at once." Grant walked around to the front of the truck, shined his flashlight at the grill. He reached out, placed his hand on the hood. Metal, cool to the touch. Not warm like an engine that had been running recently, but Sierra claimed she'd only been stopped for 30 minutes. The engine should still have some residual heat. "Ms. Mays, your hood is cold. How long ago did you say your engine died?" 20 minutes, maybe 30. "Why is it cold?" Because she'd been sitting there longer than she thought. Because time was doing something strange around this truck. Because something impossible was happening and Grant didn't have the training or the vocabulary to process it. "Ma'am, I need you to try your door. Can you open it?" On the video feed, he watched Sierra reach for the door handle, pull it. It's stuck. The door won't open. Grant tried the same door from the outside, still locked. "Miss Mays, the door is locked from the outside. Can you unlock it?" "I'm not seeing a lock button. The electronic locks aren't responding." "What about the manual lock?" "It won't move. Like it's jammed or something." Her voice was rising now, panic creeping in. "Officer, what's happening? Why can't you see me? Why can't I get out?" "Stay calm, ma'am. We're going to figure this out. I'm calling for additional units right now." Grant stepped away from the truck, keyed his radio. "Dispatch, Unit 12. I need immediate supervisor response to my location. Also requesting—" He paused, not sure how to phrase this. "Also requesting any available units with technical expertise. We have a situation here that's outside normal parameters." Unit 12. Can you clarify the nature of the emergency? How could he clarify something he didn't understand? Dispatch, I have a driver who claims to be inside a vehicle. I have video confirmation of her location, but the physical vehicle at my location appears to be empty. Time discrepancies are present. Request immediate supervisor consultation. A longer pause this time. Unit 12. Repeat your last. Did you say the driver's inside but the vehicle is empty? Affirmative, dispatch. I know how it sounds. I need backup here. Something's very wrong. Copy, Unit 12. Unit 6 is rerouting to your location. ETA 30 minutes. Supervisor Hargrove is being contacted. Stand by. Grant went back to his phone, still connected to Sierra. Ms. Mays, help is on the way. I need you to stay on this call with me. Can you do that? My battery's at 1%. I don't think... The video feed flickered. I'm going to lose connection soon. Before you do, I need you to tell me everything you remember. What were you doing before your engine died? Sierra took a shaky breath. I was driving. Northbound 207, heading for Guymon to pick up a load. Standard route, I've driven it 100 times. Radio was playing, coffee was still hot, everything was normal. What time did you start your drive? Left Lubbock at 11:30 p.m. Was going to make Guymon by 3 o'clock a.m., grab a few hours of sleep before the pickup. But then around... She paused, thinking. Around 1:15, the engine just stopped, all at once. No sputtering, no warning lights, just instant silence. Everything electrical died at the same second. Even my phone went dark for a few seconds before it came back on. Did you see anything unusual before the engine died? Other vehicles, lights, anything? No, nothing. Just empty highway. I thought maybe I'd hit something in the road, but there was no impact, no sound. The truck just stopped. Grant was about to ask another question when Sierra suddenly went rigid on the video feed. Her eyes widened, looking up through the windshield. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Miss Mays, what is it? What do you see?" There's something above me. Officer, do you see it? Please tell me you see it." Grant looked up. The sky above the truck was dark, stars scattered across the vast emptiness of the Panhandle night. He saw nothing unusual. "Ms. Mays, I don't see anything. What are you looking at?" It's blue. Like a light, but not a light. It's just there, right above the cab. It's not moving, but I can feel it. Can you feel it?" Grant felt nothing except the cold wind and the growing dread in his gut. "Ms. Mays, describe what you're seeing. Color, shape, size." "Blue. Really blue, like electrical blue. It's round, I think, but the edges aren't clear, and it's not making shadows. Officer, it's lighting up the inside of my cab, but I don't have any shadows. How is that possible?" Grant aimed his flashlight at the truck cab, illuminating it as brightly as he could. Through the windows, he could see the interior clearly. Empty seats, empty dash, no unusual illumination. No blue light. No light at all except what his flashlight provided. But on his phone screen, he could see Sierra bathed in a strange blue glow that seemed to come from above, flat and shadowless, exactly as she'd described. "Ms. Mays, I need you to stay very still. Don't make any sudden movements. Help is coming." "It's getting closer, officer. It's getting closer and I can't..." The video feed flickered violently. Sierra's voice became distorted. "Can't move my hands. Something's wrong with my..." The call dropped. Grant's phone screen went black, showing call ended. He immediately tried calling back. Straight to voicemail. "Dispatch, Unit 12. Lost contact with the driver. Attempting to reestablish." Grant tried the number again. Still voicemail. He sent a text. "Miss Mays, respond if possible." The message showed as delivered but not read. Grant approached the truck again, more urgently now. He pounded on the door, shouted, "Sierra! Sierra Mays! Can you hear me?" Nothing. The cab remained dark and empty, showing no sign that anyone had ever been inside. Grant made a decision. He went back to his SUV, popped the trunk, pulled out his door breaching tool, If she was in there somehow, trapped in some way he couldn't see or understand, he was getting her out. He positioned the tool against the driver's side door lock, prepared to force entry. He was just about to apply pressure when his radio crackled. But it wasn't dispatch. It was static, the same kind of structured, patterned static that had been reported in other incidents, the ones Grant had read about in the briefing memos and dismissed as equipment malfunction. The static rose and fell, pulsed and faded, in rhythms that sounded almost intentional. Grant turned down the volume, but the static didn't decrease. If anything, it grew louder, more insistent, filling his vehicle with that strange cadence that was almost but not quite like music. And then, cutting through the static, a voice. Not dispatch, not Sierra, something else. The voice was wrong. That was the only way Grant could describe it later. Wrong pitch, wrong tone, wrong cadence. It spoke English words, but the way they were assembled, the way they were pronounced, sounded like someone who'd learned the language phonetically without understanding the underlying rules. Officer, stand away from vehicle. Grant froze, one hand still on the breaching tool. Who is this? Identify yourself. Stand away from vehicle. Do not attempt entry. I have a civilian possibly trapped inside this vehicle. I'm performing a welfare check. Civilian is not inside your vehicle. Then where is she? The static pulsed, that strange, almost rhythm that made Grant's teeth ache. Then, civilian is here. Do not interfere. Here? Here where? Who am I speaking with? No response. Just static, pure and clean, with no more voice. Grant keyed his radio. Dispatch, Unit 12, did you copy that transmission? Unit 12, negative. We're not receiving any transmission from your radio. Your channel appears to be clear. Dispatch, I just received a voice transmission over this frequency. Unknown speaker, non-standard language patterns. Are you certain you're not hearing anything? Affirmative, Unit 12. Your signal is clean. No other transmissions detected. Grant looked up at the sky above the truck. Still dark, still empty from his perspective. But somewhere, somehow, Sierra was seeing something else. A blue light that cast no shadows. And now someone or something was talking to him over his radio, telling him not to interfere. He should wait for backup. Every procedure, every training scenario, every safety protocol said he should secure the scene and wait for additional units. But 30 minutes was a long time, and Sierra had sounded terrified in those last few seconds before the call dropped. Grant made his choice. He positioned the breaching tool and prepared to force the door. That's when the wind stopped. The sudden silence was absolute. The wind that had been pushing against Grant since he'd arrived, constant and insistent, just stopped, not faded, not died down gradually. Just stopped, like someone had flipped a switch. Grant looked around. The grass along the shoulder, which had been waving and bending, now stood perfectly still. His uniform jacket, which had been fluttering, hung motionless. Even the dust that had been swirling in his headlight beams had settled, as if gravity had suddenly increased and pulled everything down to the ground. The air felt thick, heavy, wrong. Grant's hands tightened on the breaching tool. He was acutely aware of every sound now, his breathing rough and fast, his heartbeat loud in his ears, the creak of his boots as he shifted his weight. But no wind, no ambient noise, no distant highway hum, just silence pressing in from all sides. Dispatch, Unit 12. His voice sounded flat, absorbed by the air somehow. Dispatch, do you copy? Static answered him. Not the patterned static from before, just pure white noise, like his radio had suddenly lost all signal. Dispatch, this is Unit 12, radio check. More static. Grant checked his radio. Power on, channel set correctly, squelch properly adjusted. Everything appeared to be functioning, but no response came through, just that endless hiss of dead air. Grant pulled out his cell phone. No signal. 0 bars, no service at all. 5 minutes ago he'd had full reception. Now his phone showed no service in the corner where the signal bars should have been. He was alone. Completely alone. On an empty highway with a truck that was both empty and occupied, with a driver who existed on video but not in physical space, with silence where wind should be and static where voices should be. Grant looked up at the sky again. Still dark from his perspective, still normal. But something made him keep looking, made him focus on the space directly above the truck cab. And as his eyes adjusted, as he really stared at that patch of darkness, he realized something. The stars were wrong. Not missing, not blocked, just wrong. The patch of sky above the truck showed stars, but they weren't in the right positions. Constellations Grant had known since childhood were twisted, distorted, as if he were looking at them through water or heat shimmer. And the darkness between the stars wasn't quite black. It was darker than black, if that made any sense. A depth of darkness that seemed to pull at his eyes, drawing them in. Grant forced himself to look away, back at the truck. He needed to make a decision. Wait for backup that might not be able to reach him, or attempt entry and possibly discover what had happened to Sierra Mays. The breaching tool was heavy in his hands. Standard equipment, rated to force most vehicle doors. He'd used it dozens of times in his career, always on legitimately abandoned vehicles or in emergency situations. This qualified as an emergency, right? A civilian claiming to be trapped, strange phenomena, loss of communications. Grant positioned the tool against the door lock mechanism one more time. He was just about to apply force when he heard it. A hum, low, barely audible, more felt than heard. It vibrated in his chest, resonated in his bones, made his teeth ache. The frequency was wrong. Too low for most mechanical sources, too steady for natural phenomena. It sounded like machinery, but machinery that operated on principles Grant didn't understand. The hum grew louder. Still no wind, still no movement. But that sound filled the air around him, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Grant looked up again, and this time he saw it. The blue light. It wasn't like a spotlight or a floodlight. It didn't beam down from above in a cone. It just existed, a sphere of blue luminescence maybe 20 feet across, hanging about 30 feet above the truck. The light was flat, directionless, casting no shadows. Grant could see it illuminating the truck cab, the trailer, the highway around the vehicle. But when he looked at the ground where the light should be falling, where shadows should be cast, there was nothing. The pavement remained dark. His own shadow from his patrol vehicle's headlights stretched behind him normally, but the blue light created no shadows at all. It was as if the light existed in some space that overlapped with reality but didn't quite interact with it properly. Grant's training evaporated. Every procedure, every protocol, every bit of professional detachment he'd built up over 8 years of highway patrol just vanished. He was standing on an empty highway in the middle of the Texas Panhandle, staring at something that couldn't exist, and his mind was screaming at him to run. But Sierra was in that truck, somehow, somewhere, and she was scared. Grant raised the breaching tool, set it against the lock, and applied pressure. The tool bit into the metal, the mechanism designed to force entry through sheer leverage. He pushed harder, felt the lock mechanism begin to give, and the truck vanished. Not gradually, not fading out. One moment, Grant was forcing the door lock on a big rig. The next moment, he was falling forward, the breaching tool suddenly meeting no resistance, his momentum carrying him through the space where the truck had been. Grant stumbled, caught himself, spun around. The highway was empty. The truck was gone. No tire marks on the pavement. No diesel smell in the air. No evidence that an 18-wheeler had been parked there at all. Just empty asphalt stretching into darkness, north and south, with Grant's patrol SUV sitting alone in the middle of it. The blue light was gone too. The sky above was normal again. Stars in their proper positions. Darkness the right shade of black. And the wind had returned, pushing against Grant from the south, cold and normal and real. Grant stood there, breaching tool still in his hands, trying to process what had just happened. The truck was gone. Sierra was gone. The impossible light was gone. Everything was gone except him and his vehicle, and the empty highway and the growing certainty that he'd just experienced something no training manual could have prepared him for. His radio crackled suddenly, startling him badly enough that he nearly dropped the breaching tool. Unit 12, this is dispatch. Do you copy? Unit 12, respond please. Grant grabbed his radio with shaking hands. Dispatch, Unit 12, I copy. Stand by. Unit 12, we lost you for about 15 minutes. Everything okay out there? 15 minutes. Grant checked his watch. 2:47 a.m. But that couldn't be right. He'd lost contact with Sierra around 2:35. He'd spent maybe 2 or 3 minutes trying to breach the door. It should be 2:38, maybe 2:40. Not 2:47. Unit 12, please confirm your status. Grant took a breath, tried to steady his voice. Dispatch, the truck is gone. It just disappeared. Unit 12, confirm you said the vehicle disappeared. Affirmative. It was here. I was attempting welfare entry, and it vanished. Completely gone. No trace. A pause. Unit 12, are you requesting medical assistance? Grant almost laughed. Medical assistance. As if this was a hallucination, a breakdown. Something explainable by fatigue or stress. Negative, dispatch, I'm fine, but the vehicle is gone. I need you to try contacting Sierra Mays again. Cell phone number on file. See if she responds. Stand by, Unit 12. Grant walked to where the truck had been. He got down on his hands and knees, ran his hands over the pavement. Normal asphalt. Same temperature as the surrounding highway. No warm spots from where the tires had been. No oil stains. No physical evidence at all. He stood up, looked around. His flares were still burning, spaced out behind where the truck had been. His patrol SUV sat with its lights still flashing. But the truck was gone, and with it any proof that this night had been anything other than a standard patrol shift. Unit 12, dispatch. We're unable to reach Sierra Mays. Phone goes straight to voicemail. We've contacted Mays Freight Services again. Owner confirms last GPS ping from the truck showed northbound 207, approximately mile marker 43 at 1:17 a.m. No updates since then. 1:17 a.m., right around when Sierra said her engine had died. Dispatch, what's the current timestamp on that GPS ping? Stand by. A moment later, GPS last updated at 1:17 a.m. over an hour and a half ago. System shows vehicle is stationary at that location. Dispatch, I need you to check something. Contact other units, see if anyone else has reported unusual phenomena tonight. Lights, radio interference, anything out of the ordinary. Another pause. Longer this time. Unit 12, requesting clarification on that request. Dispatch, I observed an unidentified aerial light source at this location approximately 10 minutes ago. Blue luminescence, no identifiable structure, appeared to be associated with the vehicle disappearance. I need to know if other units have reported similar observations." The pause that followed was very long. Grant could almost hear the dispatcher trying to figure out how to classify this, what boxes to check on the incident report, which supervisor to notify first. Finally, Unit 12, we're showing negative on similar reports from other units tonight. Supervisor Hargrove is requesting you return to station for debriefing. Return to station, that meant they thought he was having some kind of episode, needed to be taken off the road and evaluated. Grant couldn't really blame them. If another officer had called in saying a truck had vanished and they'd seen blue lights in the sky, he'd probably think the same thing. "Copy, dispatch, returning to station. But first I need to document this scene. I'm going to be here another 20 minutes at least. 10-4, Unit 12. Unit 6 is still en route, ETA 10 minutes. They'll secure the scene while you return." Copy. Grant spent the next 20 minutes documenting everything he could. He took photos of the empty highway. He measured the distance between his patrol vehicle and where the truck had been parked. He collected his flares. He wrote down every detail he could remember in his notebook, knowing that memory faded fast, and he needed to record this while it was fresh. He also tried calling Sierra's number multiple times, always straight to voicemail. He left messages. "Ms. Mays, this is Officer Reddick with Texas Highway Patrol. Please call me back as soon as you receive this message. I need to know you're safe." No callbacks came. Unit 6 arrived at 2:58 a.m. A veteran patrol officer named Kowalski, who'd been working the panhandle even longer than Grant. He pulled up, got out of his vehicle, and walked over with an expression that clearly said he'd been briefed on the situation and didn't know what to make of it. "Reddick," Kowalski said, "you okay?" "Honestly, I have no idea." "Want to tell me what happened here?" Grant walked Kowalski through the entire incident, from finding the apparently empty truck to the video call with Sierra, to the strange voice on the radio to the blue light to the truck's disappearance. He showed Kowalski the photos on his phone, the video call history, the text messages, all the evidence that at least part of this had been real. Kowalski listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned as the story progressed. When Grant finished, Kowalski was quiet for a moment. "That's quite a story," he finally said. "It's not a story, it happened." "I'm not saying it didn't, I'm just saying—" Kowalski looked around at the empty highway. "There's no evidence, no truck, no tire marks, no oil stains, nothing that says a vehicle was ever here. I know. And you're sure you're feeling okay? No dizziness, no headaches, no—" "I'm not having a breakdown," Grant said firmly. "Something happened here, something I can't explain, but it was real." Kowalski nodded slowly. "Okay, then let's figure out what's real and what isn't. You said you had a video call with the driver. Can you show me?" Grant pulled up his phone, opened the call history. Sierra's number was there, with a video call lasting 3 minutes and 42 seconds. He opened his photo library, found the screenshots he'd taken during the call showing Sierra in the truck cab. Kowalski examined the images carefully. That's definitely someone in a truck cab. And that blue light in the background. That's unusual. Can you see it? The light, I mean, in the photo. Yeah, I can see it. It's weird, though. It's lighting her up, but there's no shadows on her face. That shouldn't be possible. That's what she said. That it was giving off light but not casting shadows. Kowalski pulled out his own phone, started making calls. Grant listened as he talked to dispatch, to the supervisor, to someone else who sounded like maybe a state investigator. The conversations were brief and professional, but Grant could hear the underlying current of, "We have a situation we don't understand." After the calls, Kowalski said, "Supervisor wants us to stay on scene until morning, see if the truck shows up again, or if anyone comes back looking for it." State police are sending someone to take your statement, and, he paused, FAA is being notified about the aerial phenomenon. FAA, so they believe me. Let's just say you're not the first person to report strange lights out here. There's been a few incidents over the past year, mostly written off as atmospheric stuff or misidentified aircraft. But your description matches some of the other reports closely enough that they want to document it officially. Grant felt a small surge of relief. He wasn't crazy. Or if he was, at least he had company. What about Sierra Mays? Highway Patrol is checking truck stops and rest areas along her route. If she's out there and her phone died, she might be trying to find help. We'll put out a general bolo, see if anyone spots her or the truck. But Grant knew they wouldn't find her. The truck hadn't broken down, it hadn't been abandoned. It had vanished, taken somewhere by that blue light, and Sierra had been inside when it happened. Whatever was happening to her was happening in some space that didn't overlap with the highway Grant was standing on. They waited. Grant and Kowalski sat in their respective vehicles, drinking coffee from thermoses, watching the empty highway in the dark sky. Kowalski tried to keep conversation normal, talking about other shifts and weird calls and department politics. But every few minutes the talk would die off, and they'd both just stare at the empty space where the truck had been. At 3:47 a.m., Grant's phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. He answered. "This is Officer Reddick." Silence. Not dead air, not static. Just silence, like someone was holding a phone, but not speaking. "Hello? This is Officer Reddick with Texas Highway Patrol." More silence. Then, very faintly, a voice. Female, distant, like it was coming from very far away. "Officer," Grant's heart jumped. "Sierra? Sierra Mays, is that you?" "Officer, help, can't." The voice faded in and out, barely audible, like a bad connection or severe interference. Grant pressed the phone hard against his ear, straining to hear. "Sierra, where are you? Can you tell me where you are?" "Don't know. Everything's blue, can't move. Are you hurt? Are you in danger?" "Not alone. There. The call cut off. Grant immediately tried calling back. The call wouldn't connect, just gave him a fast, busy signal like the number didn't exist. "Kowalski!" Grant jumped out of his vehicle. "I just got a call from her." Kowalski emerged from his own SUV. "From Sierra Mays?" "Yes, or someone. It was breaking up bad, but it sounded like her. She said everything's blue, and she can't move, and she's not alone. Can you trace the number?" Grant pulled up his recent calls. The unknown number was there, but when he tried to call it back, he got the same fast, busy signal. He showed Kowalski the number. "That's a Panhandle area code," Kowalski said. "But the exchange is weird. I don't recognize it. Can dispatch trace it?" "We can try." Kowalski got on his radio, relayed the number to dispatch. A few minutes later, the response came back. "Number comes back as not in service. No carrier associated, no registered owner. System shows it as unassigned." "That's not possible," Grant said. "I just received a call from it 2 minutes ago." "I believe you," Kowalski said. "But the system says that number doesn't exist." They stood there in the pre-dawn darkness, two patrol officers on an empty highway, trying to make sense of something that defied sense. Grant looked up at the sky, at the stars that were now properly positioned, and wondered where Sierra really was. Not physically where, but in what space, what dimension, what fold of reality that let her make phone calls from numbers that didn't exist while sitting in a truck that was both here and not here. "You think she's okay?" Grant asked quietly. Kowalski didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "I don't know. I hope so." They waited until sunrise. The sky gradually lightened, turning from black to deep blue to pale gray to gold. The highway remained empty. No truck appeared. No more phone calls came. No blue lights manifested in the dawn. At 6:15 a.m., the state investigator arrived. At 6:45 a.m., an FAA representative showed up. At 7:30 a.m., Grant's shift officially ended and he was told to go home, get some rest, and report to the station the following evening for a formal debriefing. Grant drove home in full daylight, exhausted and wired at the same time. He couldn't stop thinking about Sierra's voice on that call, scared and confused and trapped somewhere he couldn't reach. He'd failed her. He'd been standing right there and he'd failed to help her. But what could he have done differently? How do you rescue someone from something you can't see, can't touch, can't even properly perceive? How do you fight something that exists in the gaps between what's real and what's impossible? Grant didn't sleep. He lay in his dark bedroom, curtains drawn, staring at the ceiling and replaying the night over and over. The empty truck, the video call, the blue light, the vanishing. Every detail was burned into his memory with perfect clarity, refusing to fade the way normal memories did. At 2 p.m., he gave up on sleep. He got up, made coffee, and started doing research. He searched online for Truck Disappearances Texas, Blue Lights Highway, Missing Time Patrol Officers. The results were extensive. Dozens of reports. Hundreds, maybe. Scattered across forums and blog posts and local news articles. Trucks found abandoned on highways with no drivers. Strange lights appearing over vehicles. Radio interference and electronic failures. Missing time. And always the same basic pattern. Normal situation becomes impossible. Then everything vanishes, leaving no evidence except confused witnesses and unexplainable gaps in time and space. Most of the reports were dismissed. Hoaxes, attention-seeking, misidentification of natural phenomena. But the sheer volume of them, the consistency of details across different witnesses who'd never met each other, suggested something real was happening. Something that official channels either couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge. Grant found a forum dedicated to unusual highway incidents. He created an anonymous account and posted his story, leaving out identifying details but including everything else. Within an hour, he had responses. Other officers had experienced similar things. Truck drivers, highway maintenance workers, late-night travelers. They all described the same phenomena: the sudden silence, the strange lights, the time discrepancies, the sense that reality had briefly hiccuped and caught them in the gap. One response caught his attention. A truck driver, using the handle Lone Star Hauler, had posted, "This happened to me 3 months ago on 287 near Claude. Engine died, all electrics gone, blue light overhead. I thought I was there maybe 20 minutes. My GPS showed 2 hours missing. No one believes me, but I know what I saw, and I know that while I was under that light, I wasn't alone in my cab anymore. I could feel someone else there even though I couldn't see them. They were examining me, measuring me, like I was some kind of specimen." Grant stared at that post for a long time. Someone else there. That's what Sierra had said on that final broken call. "I'm not alone." He clicked on Lone Star Hauler's profile, sent a private message. "I'm a patrol officer. I just experienced something similar. Can we talk?" The response came surprisingly fast. "You're the one from last night, aren't you? 207 north of Spearman. I saw the reports on the CB radio network. Everyone's talking about the vanishing truck." "How do you know about that?" "Because we all know. Everyone who's experienced these things, we stay connected. We watch the reports. You're not crazy, officer. This is real. And it's happening more frequently. Whatever these things are, they're getting bolder. Things, plural, the lights, the phenomena, whatever you want to call them. They're not isolated incidents. They're coordinated, connected. There's a pattern if you know how to look for it. What pattern? I can't explain it over messages, but if you're serious about understanding this, there's a group of us who meet once a month. Truck drivers, highway workers, cops, people who've experienced these incidents and want answers. Next meeting is in 3 days, Amarillo. You interested? Grant should say no. He should close the laptop, go to his debriefing, file his report, and let the authorities handle this. That was the professional thing to do, the smart thing. But Sierra was still out there. Somewhere. And maybe this group, these people who'd experienced the same impossible things, maybe they knew something that could help find her. Grant typed, "I'm interested. Send me the details." The response included an address in Amarillo, a time, and a final message. "Come alone. Don't tell your department. They don't want this investigated. Trust me on that." Grant closed his laptop and sat in his quiet apartment, feeling the weight of a choice settling on his shoulders. He could follow official channels, file his reports, let the system handle this the way it handled everything. Slow, bureaucratic, ultimately ineffective. Or he could step outside those channels, meet with people who seemed to understand what was happening, and maybe, possibly, find a way to help Sierra Mays. It wasn't really a choice at all. 3 days later, Grant drove to Amarillo after his shift. The address Lone Star Hauler had given him was a truck stop on the eastern edge of the city, one of the big ones with a restaurant, showers, and a separate building for driver facilities. Grant arrived at 11 o'clock p.m., parked his personal vehicle in the back lot, and walked to the designated meeting point. A conference room the truck stop rented out for safety meetings and company briefings. Inside, he found about 20 people, mostly men, mostly middle-aged, all looking like they'd spent significant time on the road. Truck drivers, based on their appearance and the way they moved with that particular stiffness that came from long hours in a cab. A few looked like maintenance workers, and in the back, one other person in a uniform, a highway patrol officer from Oklahoma, nameplate reading Morrison. A large man in his 50s stood at the front of the room. He had the weathered look of someone who'd spent decades behind a wheel, skin tanned and lined, hands rough. He nodded at Grant. "You must be the officer from the 207 incident. Welcome, I'm Dale Kirkman. I've been organizing these meetings for about a year now. Take a seat, we're about to start." Grant sat in the back next to Morrison. The Oklahoma officer nodded at him. "Your first meeting? Yeah, you? Third. These people know things the official reports don't mention. It's worth hearing." Dale called the meeting to order. "All right, folks, let's get started. For those who are new, this is a safe space to discuss experiences that most people won't believe or acknowledge. What's said here stays here. We're not conspiracy theorists. We're not looking for attention. We're just trying to understand what's happening on our highways, and more importantly, we're trying to stay safe." He pulled down a screen, turned on a projector. An image appeared. A map of the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles with dozens of red dots scattered across it. Each dot was labeled with a date and brief description. "These are documented incidents over the past 18 months, Dale said. Vehicle malfunctions, strange lights, missing time, radio interference. All in this region, the pattern is clear if you look at it." Grant leaned forward, studying the map. The dots weren't random. They clustered along certain highways, certain stretches of road. Highway 207 had several. So did Highway 287, Interstate 40, and several smaller state routes. "What's the pattern?" someone asked. "Remote locations," Dale said. "Always at night, always in areas with minimal traffic and no nearby towns. Whatever these things are, they prefer isolation. They don't want witnesses." He clicked to the next slide, showing a timeline. "And they're escalating. 6 incidents in the first 3 months, 12 in the next 3, 18 in the following quarter. We're now averaging almost 2 incidents per week." Morrison spoke up. "Any reports of injuries or fatalities?" "Not directly," Dale said. "But we have 3 people missing. Truck drivers who were documented as being in the affected areas at the time of incidents who haven't been seen since. One of them is Sierra Mays, from the 207 incident 3 nights ago." Grant felt his chest tighten. "You're saying she's still missing?" "As of this morning, yes. No sign of her or the truck. GPS last pinged at 1:17 a.m. on the night of the incident. Nothing since. It's like she drove into a hole in the universe." "Has anyone tried investigating the actual sites?" Grant asked. "Looking for physical evidence, electromagnetic readings, anything?" "We've tried," said a younger man in the front row. "I'm Tom, by the way. I do long-haul routes through here. I've been to 3 of these incident sites with equipment borrowed from a friend who does ghost hunting. EMF meters, temperature sensors, the works." He paused. "The sites are clean. No residual electromagnetic fields. No temperature anomalies, no radiation. Whatever leaves these lights behind, it doesn't leave measurable traces, or at least not traces our equipment can detect." "What about the vehicles that reappear?" Grant asked. "The ones that don't vanish completely. Has anyone examined them for physical evidence?" Dale nodded. "We have. The ones that are recovered show some interesting characteristics. Electronic systems often have blown fuses or fried circuits, even though no power surge was detected. Paint sometimes shows UV exposure consistent with weeks or months in the sun, even though the vehicles were only gone for hours. And there are trace elements in the metal that shouldn't be there." "What kind of trace elements?" "Isotopes of elements that don't occur naturally on Earth. We had some metal samples analyzed by a lab, told them it was from a meteor strike. The results came back showing isotopic ratios that don't match anything in our solar system. It's like these vehicles were exposed to matter from somewhere else." The room was quiet as that sank in. Grant processed the information, trying to fit it into some framework that made sense. "You're saying these are extraterrestrial in origin?" "I'm saying the evidence points that direction," Dale said, carefully. "But I'm not claiming to know for certain. What I do know is that something is happening out there, something that doesn't fit into conventional explanations, and it's getting more frequent and more aggressive." A woman in the middle row raised her hand. "I was caught in one of these incidents 6 months ago on Highway 60 near Boise City. Engine died, lights appeared, lost about 3 hours. When I came to, my truck was 30 miles from where I'd stopped, 30 miles, but my odometer said I'd driven less than 2. The same thing happened to me," another driver added. "Found myself 50 miles up the road with no memory of driving there. And my fuel tank was fuller than it should have been, like someone had topped it off while I was blacked out." Morrison leaned over to Grant. "The spatial displacement is one of the weirdest parts. These things don't just affect time. They move vehicles through space in ways that violate basic physics." "Has anyone tried fighting back?" Grant asked. "When it happens, has anyone tried to drive away or call for help or do anything to resist?" The room got very quiet. Finally, Dale said, "We had one driver try that. Name was Marcus Flynn. He was caught in an incident on 287, saw the blue light forming, and decided he wasn't going to be a passive victim. He got out of his truck, started yelling at the light, threw things at it. Even shot at it with the pistol he kept in his cab. What happened?" The light got brighter. The humming got louder. And Marcus changed. When he showed up at a truck stop 6 hours later, he couldn't speak properly. Words came out wrong, mixed up, like his brain had been scrambled. He couldn't remember his own name for 3 days. Eventually, most of his cognitive function came back, but he's not the same. He gets seizures now, can't drive anymore, can't hold a normal conversation for more than a few minutes before he starts losing words. Grant felt cold. You're saying fighting back makes it worse. We're saying resistance seems to trigger a response. The best outcomes we've seen are from people who stay calm, don't panic, and wait for the experience to end. Those people usually come through with just missing time and confusion. The ones who fight or run or try to interfere, they come back wrong, if they come back at all. Grant thought about Sierra, trapped in her truck while that blue light hung overhead. She'd sounded terrified on that call. Had she tried to fight? Had she tried to escape? Is that why she was still missing? What about the voice? Grant asked. I heard a voice on my radio. It told me not to interfere, said the civilian wasn't inside my vehicle. Has anyone else heard voices? Several hands went up around the room. Dale nodded. The voice is common. It speaks English usually, but the syntax is off. Wrong word order, wrong emphasis. We think it's some kind of translation, like they're communicating in their own language and it's being converted to words we can understand. But the translation isn't perfect. What do they say? The voices. Mostly, they tell people to stay calm, not to resist, that they'll be returned. Sometimes they ask questions. Why are you here? Where are you going? What is your purpose? Like they're trying to understand human behavior and motivation. Have they ever hurt anyone directly, beyond the cognitive damage to people who resist? Not that we can document, Dale said. But define hurt. Is it harmful to lose hours of your life with no memory? Is it harmful to have your vehicle moved through space in ways that shouldn't be possible? Is it harmful to know that something impossible is real, and no one in authority will acknowledge it? These experiences leave scars, officer. Not physical ones, but they're real. Grant couldn't argue with that. 3 nights later, he was still replaying his encounter, still seeing that blue light that cast no shadows, still hearing Sierra's scared voice on that broken call. The experience hadn't physically injured him, but it had fundamentally changed his understanding of reality. So, what do we do? Someone asked. How do we protect ourselves? Knowledge, Dale said. We document incidents. We share information. We warn each other about high-activity areas. And we try to avoid being alone in isolated areas during peak times. Peak times? Between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock a.m. seems to be when most incidents occur. If you can avoid driving remote highways during those hours, your risk drops significantly. If you can't avoid it, travel in pairs or convoys when possible. The incidents almost never affect multiple vehicles at once. They seem to prefer isolated targets. Morrison spoke up. What about official channels? Has anyone tried reporting this to federal authorities, FAA, Department of Defense, anyone who might actually investigate? We've tried, Dale said. Some of us have filed official reports. The response is always the same. Investigation pending. Please be patient. We'll contact you if we need more information. And then nothing. The reports disappear into some database and no one follows up. It's like there's an active effort to not investigate these incidents. Or they are investigating, Grant said. Just not publicly. If the government knows something is appearing in our skies, affecting civilians, and they can't explain or control it, they'd want to keep that quiet. Admitting they don't know what's happening or can't stop it would cause panic. That's our theory, too, Dale agreed. which is why we handle this ourselves. We can't count on official help. We have to protect each other." The meeting continued for another hour, with individuals sharing their experiences, comparing details, trying to find patterns that might help predict or avoid future incidents. Grant listened to it all, taking mental notes, trying to build a comprehensive picture of what was happening. The stories were remarkably consistent. Blue lights, engine failures, missing time, spatial displacement, strange voices. Almost everyone described the feeling of being watched, measured, evaluated, like they were specimens under a microscope, being studied by something that viewed them with clinical detachment. One detail kept recurring, the feeling of not being alone. Even when witnesses couldn't see anything else in their vehicles, they felt a presence, something invisible but palpable, moving around them, examining them, occasionally touching them with something that left no marks but could be felt as pressure or cold. As the meeting wound down, Dale approached Grant. "Officer, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" They stepped into the hallway outside the conference room. Dale's expression was serious. "I know you're looking for Sierra Mays," he said quietly, "and I respect that. But you need to understand something. The people who disappear completely, the ones who don't come back after a few hours, they don't come back at all. We've never had anyone return after being missing for more than 12 hours. It's been 72 hours, Grant said. I know. I'm sorry. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that she's not coming back. Or if she does, she might not be the same person who disappeared. You think they've taken her somewhere permanently. I think sometimes these incidents aren't just observations. Sometimes they're selections. Most people get examined and released, but occasionally someone gets taken. We don't know why. We don't know what criteria they use, but it happens, and the people who are taken don't return." Grant felt a surge of frustration. "Then what am I supposed to do? Just accept that she's gone?" "I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to be realistic about what you can accomplish. You can't fight something you don't understand. You can't rescue someone from a place you can't reach. All you can do is document what happened, support the search efforts, and hope for the best. That's not enough. I know, but it's all we have." Dale pulled out a business card, handed it to Grant. "If you need to talk, or if you experience another incident, call me, day or night. You're part of this community now, whether you want it to be or not. We look after each other." Grant took the card. "Thanks. One more thing. Be careful with your official reports. Don't include too much detail about the unusual aspects. Keep it factual but vague. If you push too hard on the unexplainable elements, they'll start questioning your mental fitness. I've seen good officers get put on leave or forced into counseling because they insisted on documenting the full truth. The system doesn't want to acknowledge this. Don't let them use it against you." Grant drove home that night with too much to think about. He had evidence now, lots of it, from multiple credible witnesses. He had patterns, timelines, geographic clusters. He had everything except what mattered most, a way to help Sierra Mays. The next evening, Grant reported for his debriefing at the station. His supervisor, Lieutenant Hargrove, was there along with the department psychologist and someone from the State Patrol's Internal Affairs Division. They went through his report line by line, asking questions, clarifying details, pressing him on the unusual elements. Grant followed Dale's advice. He stuck to observable facts. Yes, he'd found an apparently abandoned truck. Yes, he'd made contact with the owner via phone. Yes, there had been unusual atmospheric conditions. No, he couldn't definitively explain what had happened to the vehicle. He was careful, measured, professional. The psychologist asked about stress levels, sleep patterns, any medications or substances that might affect perception. Grant answered honestly. Normal stress, adequate sleep, no substances. He was evaluated as mentally fit for duty. The Internal Affairs representative wanted to know if Grant had followed proper procedures. Again, Grant's report stood up to scrutiny. He'd called for backup, attempted welfare contact, documented the scene. Everything by the book. After 2 hours, they let him go with a notation in his file about the incident and a recommendation for a follow-up psychological evaluation in 30 days. Grant accepted it without argument. He'd passed the immediate scrutiny. That was enough. Over the next 2 weeks, Grant continued his normal patrol duties. He drove the same routes, worked the same shifts, responded to the same types of calls. On the surface, everything was normal. But he carried Dale's card in his wallet, checked the incident forum every day, and paid attention to his surroundings in a way he never had before. He watched the sky. He noted which stretches of highway felt different, wrong somehow. He kept detailed logs of his own location and timing, creating his own database of where and when he felt most exposed. And he waited for another incident, even though part of him hoped it would never come. 16 days after the disappearance, Grant was on patrol around 2:30 a.m., northbound on Highway 207. The exact same stretch where Sierra had vanished. He'd specifically requested this route, despite Hargrove's suggestion that he might want to avoid it. Grant needed to be there, needed to see if the phenomena would repeat, needed to know if there was any way to help if someone else got caught in the same situation. The highway was empty, dark. The wind pushed against his vehicle, normal and natural. Stars overhead were properly positioned. Everything was fine. Until his engine stuttered. Just once, a brief hesitation in the normally smooth operation. Grant's heart rate spiked. He checked his dash. All gauges normal. The engine smoothed out, running fine. But that single stutter had sent a jolt of adrenaline through his system. Grant pulled over onto the shoulder, not sure why, just following instinct. He left his engine running, light bar off, and got out. The night air was cool and dry. The wind was steady. Nothing seemed wrong. But Grant felt it. That pressure in the air, that sense of wrongness, that feeling of being watched from above. He looked up. The stars were wrong. Just a small patch of sky, maybe 30 degrees of arc directly overhead. The constellations were twisted, distorted, exactly like they'd been over Sierra's truck. And as Grant stared at that impossible sky, a blue glow began to form. Not a light shining down, just illumination existing in space, growing brighter, taking shape. The same shadowless blue he'd seen before, flat and directionless and wrong. Grant's radio crackled. That same structured static, those same impossible rhythms, and then the voice, wrong pitch, wrong cadence, speaking English words in alien patterns. "Officer?" "Reddick, you?" Returned. Grant grabbed his radio. "I'm here. Where is Sierra Mays? What have you done with her?" "Sierra Mays is here. She is studied." "Is she alive? Is she safe?" Definitions. Inadequate. She exists. She is preserved. She will return. When? When will she return? When, study, complete, when, understanding, achieved, when, value, determined. The blue light grew brighter overhead. Grant could feel it now, not physically but somehow deeper. A pressure that wasn't pressure, a sensation that had no name in human language. His vehicle's electronics flickered. The engine ran rough for a moment, then smoothed out again. "What are you studying? What do you want from us?" "You, travel, you, move through, space, through, time, with, purpose. We, study. Purpose, we learn. Why, you move. We're just doing our jobs. Driving trucks, patrolling highways. There's no deeper purpose. Incorrect. All. Movement has purpose. All purpose has meaning. We must learn your meanings. The light began to pulse, that same rhythm as the static on the radio. Grant felt his consciousness starting to waver, like he was falling asleep while still standing. He forced his eyes open, fought to stay alert. If you're going to take me too, just do it. Don't leave me wondering like Sierra is wondering. Don't make my family search for me. You will not be taken. You are marked. You are different. You saw. You remember. You tell others. This is your purpose. My purpose is to tell others? Yes, you will speak of us. You will share truth. You will help others understand. We are here. We have always been here. We will remain. The light began to fade. The pressure in the air decreased. Grant's radio returned to normal static, then went silent. The stars overhead slowly returned to their proper positions. The wind continued to blow, cold and normal and real. Grant stood alone on the shoulder of Highway 207, unchanged, unharmed, but fundamentally altered in ways that went beyond the physical. He'd been chosen to be a witness, a messenger, a bridge between the impossible and the everyday. He got back in his vehicle, sat for a moment gathering his thoughts, then picked up his radio. Dispatch, Unit 12. Go ahead, Unit 12. I need to report an observation. Same location as the incident 16 days ago. Unusual atmospheric phenomena, brief electronic interference, no immediate threat. Everything is clear now. Copy, Unit 12. Do you require backup? Negative, just documenting for the record. 10-4. Grant continued his patrol, but his mind was racing. They'd told him he was marked, different, chosen to tell others. They'd confirmed Sierra was alive, being studied, preserved. They'd indicated she would return when their study was complete. But when would that be? Days? Weeks? Never? Grant pulled out his phone, sent a message to Dale. Had contact. They spoke to me. Says they're studying us, learning about human purpose and movement. Says people who are taken will return when study is complete. No timeline given. The response came 10 minutes later. This is new. They've never been this communicative before. Whatever you did, you've gotten their attention. We need to meet tomorrow night, same location. Grant confirmed and continued his shift. The rest of the night passed without incident. No more lights, no more voices, no more distortions in the fabric of reality. Just normal patrol work on normal highways under normal stars. But Grant knew nothing would be normal again. He'd been marked, designated as someone who could see and speak to the impossible. And with that designation came a responsibility. To document, to share, to help others understand what was happening on these dark highways. And maybe, just maybe, to find a way to bring Sierra Mays and the others home before their study was complete. Before they were changed too much by whatever was examining them. Before they became something other than the people they'd been when they disappeared. Grant drove through the pre-dawn darkness, watching the sky, listening to his radio, and planning his next move. The authorities wouldn't help. Official channels were closed or actively suppressing information. But the group of witnesses, the people who'd experienced these incidents and survived them, they were building something outside the system. Knowledge, patterns, understanding, and Grant was going to help them. Because somewhere out there, Sierra Mays was waiting to be found, and Grant had made her a promise, even if she couldn't hear it. He wouldn't stop looking. He wouldn't forget. He wouldn't let her disappear into some bureaucratic file and be written off as another unsolved case. The sun rose over the panhandle, painting the flat prairie in shades of gold and orange. Grant's ASA shift ended. He drove home, filed his reports, and prepared for the meeting tomorrow night. The blue lights would come again. The voices would speak again. The impossible would manifest again on these dark highways where the only witnesses were the people who traveled them. But now Grant was ready. Now he understood. Now he had purpose. And in the vast darkness above, something watched and waited, and continued its eternal study of the small creatures who moved with such determination through space and time, always traveling, always searching, always driven by purposes they themselves barely understood. The study would continue. The lights would appear. The highway would claim more witnesses to the impossible. But Grant Reddick wouldn't be a passive observer anymore. He would be an active participant in understanding and, ultimately, he hoped, in bringing the taken ones home. Even if home was no longer the same place it had been before the lights came down from the empty Texas sky. You ever drive through the Texas Panhandle at night? I'm talking about those stretches where there's nothing but darkness on both sides of you, where the highway just goes on and on like a ribbon cutting through nowhere, where the only lights you see are your own headlights, maybe a gas station every 50 miles if you're lucky, and the stars above you that go on forever. Yeah, that's where this happened. My name's Liam Huxford, and I've been driving trucks for about 17 years now. Started when I was 22, fresh out of a failed attempt at community college, needed money, and my uncle said the trucking life was good money if you didn't mind being alone. Turned out I didn't mind it at all, actually preferred it. Something about the road, the engine humming, the white lines disappearing under your wheels. It all just makes sense to me in a way that nothing else ever did. I've driven all over this country, seen sunrises over the Rockies, watched storms roll across the plains, delivered loads to every major city you can name. But the Panhandle, man, the Panhandle is different, especially at night. It's like driving through the bottom of an empty swimming pool, if that makes sense. Everything's just flat and dark and quiet in a way that feels almost wrong. This story starts on a Tuesday night in October, about 3 years ago. I was hauling refrigerated goods from Amarillo down to Lubbock, nothing special, a route I'd done probably 50 times before. The load was light, mostly dairy products, and I was making good time. Left Amarillo around 9 at night because I'd had to wait for the warehouse to finish loading, but that was fine. I actually preferred night driving. Less traffic, cooler temperatures, and you can just zone out and let the miles pass. I had my buddy Jackson with me that night. Jackson Tillman, he'd been driving for about 10 years. We'd met at a truck stop in Oklahoma a few years back and stayed in touch. He was between loads and needed a ride down to Lubbock anyway, so I told him to hop in. Company's always nice, even for someone like me who usually prefers the solitude. Jackson's a good guy, about my age, maybe a year or two younger. Quiet, like me. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. Just comfortable silence, the kind you can only have with someone who understands the road the way you do. He'd brought his camera with him, one of those nice digital ones, because he liked to take pictures of interesting things he saw on the road. Sunsets, weird signs, abandoned buildings, that sort of thing. "You see that?" Jackson said about an hour into the drive, pointing out the passenger window. I glanced over, nothing but darkness. "See what?" "Thought I saw lights out there, like 3 of them in a row." I looked harder. Still nothing. Probably just a cell tower or something. Maybe. He didn't sound convinced. We drove on. The radio was playing some old country station, the signal getting weaker the further we got from Amarillo. Eventually, it faded to static and I turned it off. That's when you really notice how quiet it is out there. Just the engine, the tires on the asphalt, maybe the wind if it's blowing hard enough. But that night, there was barely any wind. The air was still, unusually still. I remember noticing that because usually out on the Panhandle, there's always at least a little breeze. But that night felt different, heavy somehow, like the air itself was waiting for something. "There they are again," Jackson said, leaning forward in his seat. "You see them now?" This time I did. 3 lights, perfectly spaced, way off in the distance to our right. They were bright, really bright, almost white with maybe a slight orange tinge to them. At first I thought maybe they were flares, the kind road crews use. But they weren't on the ground. They were up in the air, maybe 50 feet or so. "Probably helicopters," I said, though, even as I said it, I knew that didn't make sense. Helicopters would be moving, would have other lights, red and green navigation lights. These were just 3 steady white points of light, hanging there in the darkness. "Those aren't helicopters," Jackson said. He was already reaching for his camera. We watched them as we drove. They stayed in the same position relative to us, which was weird because we were doing 65 miles per hour. If they were stationary, we should have been getting closer, but they seemed to keep the same distance. "This is weird," I said, and I meant it. In 17 years of night driving, I'd seen plenty of strange things. Weird weather, strange animals, lights that turned out to be reflections or distant buildings. But this felt different. Jackson had his camera out now, trying to film through the passenger window. "I'm not getting anything," he said after a minute. "The camera's just showing darkness. Maybe it's too far away. No, I mean there's nothing. Like the camera can't pick them up at all." That made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, but I tried to stay rational. Could be the exposure settings or something. Yeah, maybe. The lights followed us for about 10 minutes, maybe a little more. Then, as we came around a long, gentle curve in the highway, they seemed to shift position. Now they were more ahead of us, still off to the right but closer to straight ahead. And they were getting brighter. "Liam," Jackson said, and there was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Fear, maybe, or something close to it. "I see it. The lights weren't just brighter. They were bigger. Or closer. Hard to tell in the dark with no reference points. But they'd definitely changed. They weren't points anymore. They were more like orbs, each one about the size of a basketball if you held it at arm's length. "Should we pull over?" Jackson asked. "And do what?" "I don't know, man. This is freaking me out." I glanced at my speedometer, still doing 65. The truck was running fine, everything normal, but my heart was starting to beat faster, and I had this weird feeling in my gut, like something was about to happen. The lights moved again. This time they shifted from the right side to directly ahead of us. Still up in the air, still that bright white-orange color. And now I could see they were in a perfect line, perfectly spaced, like someone had measured the distance between them with a ruler. "Those are not planes," Jackson said. "Those are not helicopters. What the hell are those?" "I don't know." We were maybe a quarter mile from them now, and they were just hanging there, not moving, not making any sound that we could hear over the engine. Just 3 perfect spheres of light suspended in the night sky above an empty Texas highway. That's when my radio came back on by itself. Not the FM station I'd been listening to. This was different. Static, but not normal static. It had a rhythm to it, almost like a pulse, and underneath it was this low, humming sound that made my teeth ache. "You hearing this?" I asked Jackson. "Yeah, what is that?" I reached for the radio to turn it off, but before I could touch it, the sound stopped. Just cut out completely, and the radio went dead. Not just silent, but dead. The display that shows the station and time just went black. "Liam," Jackson said, and now he was definitely scared. "We need to stop. We need to pull over right now." But I couldn't. I don't mean I didn't want to. I mean I physically couldn't. My hands were locked on the wheel, my foot steady on the gas, and even though my brain was screaming at me to stop, to turn around, to do anything except keep driving toward those lights, my body wouldn't obey. "I can't," I said, and I heard the panic in my own voice. "I can't stop, Jax, I can't." The lights rushed toward us. That's the only way I can describe it. 1 second, they were a quarter mile away. The next second, they were right there, right in front of the truck. So bright I should have been blinded, but somehow wasn't. They filled the windshield, filled my vision, filled everything, and I could see they weren't just lights, they were objects, solid objects with that light coming from them or through them, or maybe they were made of light, I couldn't tell. And then I felt it. This pull, this incredible pull, like someone had reached into my chest and grabbed my heart and was pulling me forward, pulling me up, pulling me out of the truck and up into the sky, and I was going to go, I was going to leave, I was going to disappear into those lights and never come back, and "Liam!" Jackson's voice cut through it, broke whatever hold those things had on me. My hands jerked on the wheel, my foot slammed on the brake, and the truck skidded, tires screaming, and we slid sideways on the asphalt before I got control again. The lights were gone. Just like that. Like they'd never been there. The road ahead was dark, empty, normal. The only illumination was from my headlights cutting through the darkness like always. I sat there, hands shaking on the wheel, trying to catch my breath. Jackson was breathing hard too, pressed back in his seat like he'd been running. "What the hell was that?" he finally said. "What the hell just happened?" "I don't know." "Did you see those things? Did you see how close they were?" Yeah, I saw them." "Where did they go?" I looked around, checked all the mirrors. Nothing, just empty highway stretching behind us, empty land on both sides, empty sky above. It was like those lights had just blinked out of existence. My radio was still dead. I tried the power button, nothing happened. I checked my phone. It was dead too, completely drained, even though it had been at 70% charge when we left Amarillo. "Check your phone," I said to Jackson. He pulled it out. "Dead, but I just charged it before we left." We sat there for another minute, maybe 2. I was trying to process what had just happened, trying to make it make sense, but it didn't. Nothing about it made sense. "We should go," I finally said. "We should keep moving." "Are you okay to drive?" Yeah, I think so." I put the truck back in gear and started rolling forward, slowly at first, then gradually building back up to speed. Everything felt normal now. The truck was running fine, the road was clear, the night was just a normal October night in the Panhandle. Except it wasn't. Because about 10 minutes later, I noticed something on the GPS. The one built into the truck's dashboard. The one the company uses to track our location and mileage. "Jax," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were starting to shake again. "Look at this." He leaned over to see the screen. "What am I looking at?" "The mileage. According to this, we've only driven 63 miles from Amarillo. So? So, we left Amarillo over an hour and a half ago. We should have driven at least 90 miles by now, probably more." He stared at the screen, then looked at me. "Maybe it's broken." Maybe. Or maybe. I didn't finish the sentence. Didn't want to say it out loud. But we both knew what I was thinking. We'd lost time. Somehow, some way, we'd lost almost half an hour, and neither of us could account for it. The rest of the drive to Lubbock was quiet. We didn't talk about what happened, didn't try to explain it. Just sat there in the dark cab, both of us lost in our own thoughts, trying to make sense of something that couldn't be made sense of. When we finally pulled into the truck stop in Lubbock, it was almost 2 in the morning. I parked, killed the engine, and just sat there for a minute. "You think we should report this?" Jackson asked. "Report it to who? And say what? That we saw some weird lights and lost track of time? Yeah, when you put it like that, it sounds pretty stupid." "Exactly." We got out of the truck. My legs felt shaky, like I'd been running instead of sitting for hours. Jackson looked pale in the fluorescent lights of the parking lot. "You want to get some coffee?" I asked. Yeah, I think I need that." We walked into the truck stop diner, got a booth in the back, ordered coffee. The waitress was an older woman, probably in her 60s, with kind eyes and a name tag that said Dorothy. "You boys look like you've seen a ghost," she said as she poured our coffee. Jackson and I exchanged a look. "Something like that," I said. She nodded, like she understood, though she couldn't have. "Well, you're safe here. Whatever's out there, it can't get you in here." It was a strange thing to say, but also oddly comforting. We thanked her, and she walked away, leaving us alone with our coffee and our thoughts. "So," Jackson said after a long silence, "what do we do now?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, do we just pretend this didn't happen? Do we just go on like normal?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to do exactly that, to just file this away as one of those weird things that happen on the road, nothing more. But another part of me, the bigger part, knew that wasn't possible. What we'd experienced out there, whatever those lights were, it was real. It happened, and pretending it didn't wasn't going to change that. "I don't know," I finally said, "but I think we need to figure it out." "How?" "I don't know that either. But I've been driving these roads for 17 years and I've never seen anything like that. Never even heard of anything like that. Which means either we're the first or other people have seen it too and just didn't talk about it." "Exactly." Jackson took a long drink of his coffee. "So what? We start asking around, see if any other drivers have had similar experiences." "Maybe. I mean, what else can we do?" He nodded slowly. Okay, yeah, we can do that." We finished our coffee, paid the check, and headed back out to the truck. I still had to drop off my load in the morning, then figure out where my next job was taking me. Jackson needed to find his own ride, get back to his truck wherever he'd left it. But before we split up, he turned to me and said, "You know this changes things, right? After tonight, nothing's going to be the same." And he was right, because once you've seen something like that, once you've felt that pull, that sense of something vast and unknown reaching out for you, you can't unsee it, can't unfeel it. It's there with you always, every time you drive at night, every time you see lights in the distance, every time the radio goes to static. You're always wondering, is it happening again? Is tonight the night they come back? The next few weeks were strange. I kept driving, kept making my runs, but I couldn't stop thinking about what happened on that highway. Every night when I was alone in the truck, I'd find myself watching the sky more carefully, paying attention to every light in the distance, every weird sound on the radio. Jackson and I stayed in touch. We'd text each other every few days, mostly just checking in, making sure we were both okay. Neither of us talked directly about that night on the Panhandle, not in text messages anyway. It felt like something that needed to be discussed in person, not through a phone screen. About 2 weeks after the incident, I was at a truck stop in Oklahoma, fueling up and grabbing some food, when I ran into a driver I'd met a few times before. His name was Marcus. Been driving even longer than me, had to be in his 50s at least. Good guy, always had interesting stories. We got to talking, and I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I brought up strange experiences on the road. I kept it vague, just asked if he'd ever seen anything weird out there at night. Marcus looked at me for a long moment, like he was deciding something. Then he said, "Why? You see something?" "Maybe. I don't know. Just curious." He nodded slowly. "I'll tell you something, but you gotta promise not to think I'm crazy." "I promise." About 8 years ago, I was driving through the Panhandle late at night. I saw these lights, 3 of them, in a perfect line. They followed me for about 20 miles, then just disappeared. He paused, watching my reaction. When I got to my destination, I checked my logs. I was missing almost an hour, just gone, no explanation. My heart started beating faster. "Did you report it?" "To who?" "The company would think I'd fallen asleep at the wheel. The cops would think I was drunk or high, so I kept my mouth shut, tried to forget about it." He looked at me hard. "Why? You see something similar?" I nodded. Yeah, I did." "When?" 2 weeks ago. Same road, same kind of lights." Marcus was quiet for a minute. Then he said, "There's others, you know, other drivers who've seen things out there. We don't talk about it much because, well, you know why, but it happens more than you'd think." "How many others?" "I know of at least 4 or 5 guys personally, but I've heard stories about more." This was exactly what I needed to hear. Confirmation that Jackson and I weren't crazy, that this was something real, something that happened to other people. "Do you think I could talk to them?" I asked. "The other drivers?" Marcus thought about it. "Maybe. Let me make some calls, see who's willing. Some of these guys, they don't like talking about it. Scares them too much." "I understand. Give me your number. I'll reach out if I can set something up." We exchanged numbers, and I felt a little bit better. Not much, but a little. At least now I knew we weren't alone. True to his word, Marcus called me 3 days later. He'd talked to 2 other drivers who were willing to meet and discuss their experiences. We set up a time and place, a truck stop diner in Amarillo, the following Tuesday night. I called Jackson and told him about it. He was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed to come. I think he needed answers as badly as I did. That Tuesday, I made sure to arrive early. The diner was one of those classic truck stop places, all chrome and neon, open 24 hours, serving food that wasn't great but was hot and filling. I got a booth in the back corner, ordered coffee, and waited. Marcus showed up first, followed by the 2 other drivers. One was a guy named Tommy, younger than me, maybe late 20s, skinny with nervous energy. The other was a woman named Rachel, probably mid-40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Jackson arrived last, looking as nervous as I felt. We all sat down, ordered coffee, and for a few minutes nobody said anything. It was awkward. 5 strangers gathered to talk about something that shouldn't exist. Finally, Rachel broke the silence. "So, who wants to go first?" I figured it might as well be me. I told them everything that happened that night. The lights, the pull, the lost time, the dead electronics. Jackson filled in details I missed. When we finished, the others just nodded, like they'd heard similar stories before. "Mine happened 3 years ago," Rachel said. "I was driving down from Amarillo to Plainview, middle of the night. Saw 3 lights off to the west, thought they were towers at first. Then they started moving, keeping pace with me. I tried to outrun them, floored it up to 85, but they stayed with me the whole time. What happened? I asked. They got closer, so bright I thought I'd crash. Then I blinked, and they were gone. When I checked my phone, it was dead. My truck's computer showed I'd been driving for 2 hours, but I'd only left Amarillo 45 minutes before. Tommy's story was similar. He'd seen the lights near dawn, watched them hover over his truck for what felt like minutes. When they left, his radio was fried, and he found his truck parked on the shoulder with no memory of pulling over. Marcus shared his story again, the one he'd told me before, but with more details this time. He talked about the feeling of being watched, the sense that something was aware of him, studying him. The question is, Rachel said after we'd all shared, what are they, and what do they want? I think they're testing us, Tommy said quietly. Like, seeing how we react. Testing us for what? Jackson asked. I don't know, but they're not random, right? It's always the same road, always late at night, always the same 3 lights. That's not a coincidence. Maybe it's military, I suggested. Some kind of experimental aircraft. Rachel shook her head. I thought that too, at first. But military aircraft don't make your electronics die. They don't make you lose time. And they definitely don't make you feel like something's trying to pull you out of your body. That last part hit me hard, because that's exactly how I'd felt. Like something was trying to extract me, to pull me up and away. So, if it's not military, Jackson said slowly, then what is it? Nobody had an answer. We sat there in silence, 5 people bound together by an experience that shouldn't have been possible. Has anyone tried to investigate? I asked. Like, actually go back and look for them? You're kidding, right? Tommy said. Why would you want to go back? Because I need to know, I said. I need to understand what happened. Rachel studied me. You realize they might take you next time, right? That's what happened to me. First time, they just followed. Second time, they got closer. I haven't driven that route since because I'm afraid of what might happen on a third time. Wait, Jackson said. You've seen them more than once? She nodded. Twice. Both times on Highway 207, both times around 2 in the morning. That's near where we saw them, I said. Marcus leaned forward. I've been doing some research. Not scientific or anything, just reading reports online, talking to people. From what I can tell, there's a pattern. The sightings cluster around certain highways in the Panhandle. Always flat, isolated stretches, always at night. And almost always multiple lights, usually 3. But why 3? Tommy asked. Why not 1 or 4 or 10? I don't know, but it means something. It has to. We talked for another hour, sharing theories, comparing details of our experiences. By the end of it, we decided to do something that probably wasn't smart. We were going to try to see them again. Not all of us. Rachel refused, said she'd seen enough. Tommy was on the fence, but Marcus, Jackson, and I agreed we needed to go back, needed to try to document what was happening. We'll need equipment, Marcus said. Real cameras, not just phones, recording devices, maybe some way to measure electromagnetic fields or whatever. I know a guy, Jackson said. He's into paranormal stuff, has all kinds of equipment. I can ask if he'll lend us some gear. When do we do this? I asked. Give it a week, Marcus said. Let me finish my current jobs, get some time off. We'll pick a night, drive the route, and see what happens. It was decided. In 1 week, we'd go back to that highway, back to where the lights appeared, and we'd try to find answers. I should have been scared. Hell, I was scared. But I was also excited in a strange way, because for the first time since that night, I felt like I was doing something instead of just being a victim of whatever those things were. The week passed slowly. I made my regular runs, tried to stay busy, but my mind kept drifting back to what we were planning. Jackson got the equipment from his friend: 2 professional-grade cameras, a digital audio recorder, something called an EMF meter that supposedly detected electromagnetic fields, and a bunch of flashlights and backup batteries. We were as ready as we were going to be. The night we chose was a Thursday, clear skies, no moon. Marcus met us at the same truck stop where we'd had our meeting. He'd brought his truck, said it would be better than mine since his had some modifications that might help if things went wrong. We loaded the equipment into his cab and headed out. The plan was to drive the same route I'd taken that night, starting in Amarillo and heading south. If the lights appeared, we'd document everything. If they didn't, well, at least we'd tried. The first hour was uneventful. We drove through the darkness, watching the empty land slide by, the highway stretching endlessly ahead. Marcus kept the speed steady at 65, the same speed I'd been doing when I first saw the lights. Jackson was in the passenger seat with one camera, I was in the sleeper berth with the other, and Marcus was driving. We'd decided to keep the radio off, didn't want to miss any sounds. "You guys feel that?" Marcus said suddenly. "Feel what?" I asked. "The air. It feels heavy." He was right. The air in the cab had taken on that same thick, waiting quality I remembered from that night. My pulse started to quicken. "They're coming," I said. "They're coming. I can feel it." Jackson had the camera up, pointing out the passenger window. "I don't see anything yet." "They'll be off to the right," I said. That's where they were for me. We drove on, every second feeling like an hour. And then, right on schedule, we saw them. 3 lights, far off in the distance, perfectly spaced, that bright white-orange glow I remembered so well. "There," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Right there. You see them?" "I see them," Jackson said, camera running. "I'm recording." "Same here," I said, filming through the back window. The lights held their position, keeping pace with us as we drove. They were doing exactly what they'd done before. Tracking us, following us, watching us. "Check the EMF meter," Marcus said. Jackson grabbed it, switched it on. The display lit up, and the needle immediately jumped into the red zone. "It's going crazy," he said. "I've never seen it this high." "Are they getting closer?" I asked. Marcus checked the mirrors. "Can't tell. They look the same distance to me." But they weren't the same distance, I knew, because I remembered how this went. They'd stay back for a while, following, and then they'd rush forward. "We need to be ready," I said. "When they come closer, we need to keep filming no matter what." "What if we can't?" Jackson asked. "What if they do that thing, that pull you talked about?" "Then we fight it. We keep our cameras rolling and we fight it." 5 minutes passed. 10. The lights kept following, never getting closer, never falling back, just maintaining that perfect distance. And then the radio turned on by itself. That same pulsing static, that same low hum that made my teeth ache. Marcus reached to turn it off, but just like before, it died on its own before he could touch it. "Here they come," I said, and I was right. The lights rushed forward, covering the distance in seconds, and suddenly they were right there, filling the windshield, so bright it should have been blinding. But this time we were ready. This time we kept filming. I could feel the pull starting, that sensation of being drawn upward, but I fought it. Locked my jaw, gripped the camera tighter, kept my finger on the record button. In the front seat, Jackson was doing the same. "I got them," he was saying. "I got them on camera. I got them," and then his camera died. The display went black, and even though he was hitting buttons, it wouldn't come back on. My camera was still working. I kept filming, kept pointing it at those lights, even as the pull got stronger, even as I felt like I was being torn apart from the inside. Marcus was fighting the wheel, trying to keep the truck steady, but I could see his hands shaking. The lights were so close now I could see they were some kind of craft. 3 identical vehicles hovering maybe 50 feet above the highway. They were metallic, or at least had a metallic sheen, and that light was coming from them, emanating from their entire surface. And then I saw something else, something that made my blood run cold. There were figures inside the lights, or the lights were inside the figures. I couldn't tell which. But there were shapes, humanoid but wrong, watching us through my camera lens. "Marcus," I managed to say. "Marcus, drive, just drive, don't stop." But it was too late. The truck was slowing down, even though Marcus's foot was pressed all the way down on the gas. The engine was still running. I could hear it. But we were losing speed like something was holding us back. "We're stopping," Marcus said, and there was panic in his voice now. "I can't keep us moving. We're stopping." The truck rolled to a complete stop in the middle of the highway. The lights hung above us, so bright, so close, and I could feel them inside my head now. Not words, but something else, some kind of presence, pushing against my thoughts, trying to get in. I kept filming, it was all I could do. My finger was locked on the record button, and I kept the camera pointed at those lights, even as tears streamed down my face, even as I felt like my skull was going to split open. And then, just like before, they were gone. The lights vanished, the pull released, and we were alone on the dark highway. The truck's engine was still running. Marcus's hands were still on the wheel. Jackson's camera was still dead in his lap, but I was still filming. I checked the camera's display, still recording, still working. "Are you guys okay?" I asked. "Yeah," Marcus said, his voice shaky. "Yeah, I'm okay." "Same," Jackson said. "Did you get it? Did you get them on camera?" "I don't know. Let me check." I stopped recording and played back the video. At first it looked good. I could see the dark highway, could see the lights in the distance, could see them rushing closer. But when they got close, when they should have been right in frame, the video went weird. It didn't go dark, didn't cut out, but it was like the camera couldn't quite focus on them. They appeared as bright blobs, constantly shifting, never quite solid. And the figures I'd seen, the shapes inside or behind the lights, they weren't there in the video. It just showed the lights themselves, nothing more. "Damn it," I said. "The camera couldn't capture them properly." "Let me see," Jackson said. I passed him the camera. He watched the playback, his face falling. "This is useless. No one's going to believe this. It just looks like lens flares or car headlights." He was right. Without clear footage, without something concrete, all we had was another story, another unverifiable account that people could easily dismiss. Marcus pulled the truck over to the shoulder, put it in park. "Let me see my GPS." He pulled up the navigation system, checked our location and the elapsed time. His face went pale. "What?" I asked. "We've lost 45 minutes, he said. "According to this, we've been on this highway for over 2 hours, but we left Amarillo 90 minutes ago." The same thing that had happened to me. The same missing time, the same impossible gap. "This is wrong," Jackson said. "This is so wrong." "Check the EMF meter," I said. Jackson picked it up. The display was cracked, like someone had hit it with a hammer, but it was still working. The needle was pegged at maximum. "It's broken," he said. "Or it's detecting something we can't see," Marcus said quietly. We sat there in that truck. 3 men who'd gone looking for answers and found only more questions. The footage was inconclusive. The time was missing. The equipment was damaged, but we'd seen them, we'd been close enough to touch them, and whatever they were, wherever they came from, they were real. "We need to try again," I said. "Are you insane?" Jackson asked. "After what just happened?" "We have to. We need better equipment, better preparation. We need to figure out what's causing the cameras to malfunction." "Or," Marcus said, "we accept that maybe we're not supposed to figure this out. Maybe some things aren't meant to be understood." "I can't accept that." "Then you're going to have to do it without me," Marcus said. "I'm done. I got my answers. They're real, they're out there, and they're dangerous. That's enough for me." Jackson nodded. "I'm out too, Liam. This is too much." I understood, I really did, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when we'd been so close. "Fine," I said. "I'll do it myself." I spent the next month preparing. I sold some of my stuff, saved up money, bought the best camera equipment I could afford. Professional-grade video cameras with night vision, audio recorders, multiple EMF meters in case some broke, even a radiation detector because I didn't know what else might be useful. I read everything I could find about UFO encounters, particularly ones in the Panhandle. Turned out Marcus was right. There were dozens of reports, going back years. Most were dismissed as misidentifications or hoaxes, but the consistency of the details was striking. 3 lights, nighttime, flat highways, missing time. Something was happening out there. Something real. And I was going to prove it. I also reached out to Rachel, the other driver from our meeting. She'd refused to come on the drive with us, but I thought maybe she'd be willing to share more details now that I'd had my own second encounter. We met at a diner, same as before. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. "I heard about what happened with you, Marcus, and Jackson," she said. "Heard the footage didn't turn out. Word travels fast. It's a small community, us drivers who have seen things. We talk. I want to try again," I said. "I want to go back better prepared." Rachel shook her head. "You really don't learn, do you? I need to understand what they are." "Why? Why do you need to know so badly?" That was a good question. Why was I so obsessed with this? Most people would have taken the first encounter as a warning, would have avoided that highway for the rest of their lives, but I couldn't let it go. "Because they're in my head," I finally said. "Every night I dream about those lights. I wake up feeling like something's watching me, and I can't live like this, always wondering, always afraid. I need answers." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I get it, I really do. But you need to understand something. These things, whatever they are, they're not just lights. They're not just some unexplained phenomenon. They're intelligent, they're aware, and they're doing something to us, changing us somehow." "What do you mean, changing us?" "After my second encounter, I started noticing things. Little things at first. I could predict when other drivers were going to change lanes before they signaled. I knew when my truck needed maintenance before any warning lights came on. It was like I could sense things I shouldn't be able to sense." "That's happened to me too," I said. "I thought I was just getting better at my job. It's not that. It's something they did to us. Some kind of modification or enhancement or I don't know what. And the more times you encounter them, the stronger it gets." This was news to me. I'd noticed I seemed more aware on the road, more attuned to my surroundings, but I'd attributed it to being more cautious after my experience. "So, what are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying maybe they're not just observing us. Maybe they're testing us, changing us, preparing us for something. And if you keep going back, if you keep seeking them out, you're giving them permission to do more. Do you regret your encounters?" She thought about it. "Yes and no. I hate what they did to me. hate that they violated my life without my consent. But at the same time, I can't deny that some of the changes have been useful. I'm a better driver now. I'm more aware, more connected to my environment. Is that worth the trauma? I don't know. We talked for another hour. She gave me advice on equipment, told me what had and hadn't worked in her attempts to document her encounters. She also warned me repeatedly that I was playing with fire, but I'd already made up my mind. I was going back. I picked a night 2 weeks later. Clear skies, no moon, same conditions as before. This time, I was alone. I'd rented a car instead of using my truck, figuring a smaller vehicle might be less conspicuous. I drove out to the highway where we'd seen the lights, parked on the shoulder, and set up my equipment. Multiple cameras at different angles, audio recorders running, EMF meters positioned around the car. If the lights appeared, I'd capture them from every possible perspective. Then I waited. Hour 1 passed. Nothing. Just darkness and silence. Hour 2. Still nothing. I started to wonder if they only appeared when you were driving, not when you were stationary. Hour 3. I was getting tired. My eyes kept trying to close. And then, at 3:47 in the morning, they came. I didn't see them at first. The EMF meters started going crazy, needles jumping into the red zone, and that's what alerted me. I grabbed my cameras, started recording, and scanned the horizon. There, off to the west. 3 lights, just like before, but farther away this time. They were hovering maybe a mile off, hanging in the darkness like stars that had fallen halfway to Earth. I watched them through the camera's viewfinder. They weren't moving, weren't coming closer, just sitting there, waiting for what? For me to do something? I got out of the car. The night air was cool, still, no wind at all. I could hear my own breathing, the blood rushing in my ears. The lights held their position. I took a step forward, then another. The lights didn't react. I kept walking, moving away from my car toward the lights. They were about a mile away, maybe more. It would take me 15 or 20 minutes to walk that far. I'd only gone maybe 50 yards when they moved, all 3 simultaneously lifting higher in the sky, moving farther west. They were maintaining distance, like they wanted me to follow but not get too close. I kept walking. Every 100 yards or so, they'd move again, always staying about a mile ahead. It was like some bizarre game, them leading, me following. After about 10 minutes, I realized I'd left all my equipment back at the car. I only had one small camera with me, the one I'd been holding. All the other cameras, the audio recorders, the backup EMF meters, they were all back there. I should have gone back, should have retrieved the equipment. But I couldn't. Something pulled me forward, not physically like before, but mentally. I had to keep following, had to see where they were leading me. The lights led me off the highway, into the empty land beyond. There was no path, no road, just flat scrubland stretching in all directions. I walked through it, stumbling occasionally on rocks or brush, but I kept my eyes on the lights. And then they stopped moving. I stopped too, about half a mile from them now. This was closer than I'd ever been when they were stationary. Close enough that I could see they definitely weren't planes or helicopters or any conventional aircraft. They were something else entirely. The lights began to pulse, growing brighter and dimmer in a steady rhythm, and with each pulse, I felt something in my chest, like my heartbeat was trying to sync up with them. I raised the camera, started recording again, but I knew, even as I did it, that the footage wouldn't show what I was seeing. Cameras couldn't capture this, not really. You had to be there, had to feel it, to understand. The pulsing grew faster, brighter, and then Between one pulse and the next, a fourth light appeared. This one was different. Smaller, brighter, more concentrated. It emerged from the center light, the one in the middle of the three, and began floating toward me. I should have run. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run. But I stood my ground, camera still recording, and watched it approach. It got to within maybe 20 feet of me and stopped. This close, I could see it wasn't just a light. It was a sphere, perfectly round, made of something that seemed to be both solid and liquid at the same time. The light came from within it, pulsing in that same rhythm. And then it spoke to me, not in words, not in sounds. It spoke directly into my mind, and the message was clear. Why do you seek us? I tried to answer out loud, but no sound came out. So I thought my response instead. I need to understand what you are. Understanding is not necessary. Acceptance is sufficient. That's not enough for me. A pause. The sphere pulsed brighter. You are different from the others. Most flee. Most forget. But you return. You seek. Because you took something from me. Time. Memory. I need it back. We took nothing. We borrowed. We will return. When? When you are ready. Ready for what? But the sphere didn't answer. It began floating backward, returning to the three larger lights. They pulsed once more, so bright I had to close my eyes. And when I opened them again, they were gone. I stood alone in the dark scrubland, holding a camera that had captured nothing useful, with more questions than I'd started with. But I'd gotten something. A communication. Proof, at least to myself, that these things were intelligent, that they had purpose, that they were doing something deliberate. I walked back to my car. It took almost an hour, and by the time I got there, the sun was starting to rise. I loaded up my equipment, checked the footage from all the cameras I'd left running. Most of it was useless. Just shots of an empty highway, my car, darkness. But one camera, the one I'd pointed west, had caught something interesting. Right at the moment when the fourth sphere appeared, there was a flash on the recording. Just a brief burst of light, lasting maybe a second. It wasn't much. Wouldn't convince any skeptics. But it was something. I drove back to Amarillo, exhausted and confused. I didn't know what to make of the conversation I'd had, if you could call it that. When you're ready... Ready for what? What were they preparing us for? I needed to talk to someone about this, someone who might have answers, or at least might be able to help me make sense of it. I thought about Rachel, but she'd already made it clear she didn't want to dig any deeper. Marcus and Jackson were out. I needed someone new, someone who studied this stuff professionally. After some research, I found a researcher at a university in New Mexico who specialized in UFO phenomena. Her name was Dr. Elena Vasquez, and she'd written several papers on the psychological and physiological effects of close encounters. I sent her an email explaining who I was and what I'd experienced, without going into too much detail. To my surprise, she responded within a few hours. She wanted to meet. We set up a time the following week. I drove down to New Mexico, to her office on campus. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with sharp eyes that reminded me of Rachel. "Thank you for coming," she said as we sat down in her office. "Your email was intriguing." "I'm not crazy," I said immediately. She smiled. "I don't think you're crazy. I've studied hundreds of cases like yours. Most of them have certain commonalities. Missing time, electromagnetic effects, the sensation of a presence or communication. Your experience fits the pattern. So what are they? What are these things? That's the question, isn't it? The truth is, we don't know. The government denies any knowledge, which could mean either they genuinely don't know, or they know and aren't telling. My theory is that whatever these phenomena are, They've been interacting with humans for a very long time. Why? What do they want? Again, we don't know, but based on the patterns I've studied, I believe they're conducting some kind of long-term study or experiment. They seem particularly interested in certain individuals, usually people who are isolated, alone, in remote areas. Like truck drivers. Exactly like truck drivers. You're perfect subjects. You're alone, you're in areas with few witnesses, you're accustomed to long periods of isolation. If I wanted to study humans without causing a panic, truck drivers would be on my short list. This made a horrifying amount of sense. The entity I encountered, I said, it told me I was different. That most people flee or forget, but I keep seeking. What does that mean? Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, interested. You had direct communication? Yes, or at least I think I did. It spoke in my head. That's rare. Most encounters don't involve direct communication. The fact that you experience that suggests you're particularly interesting to them. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be. But it also means you might be able to learn more than most. If they're willing to communicate with you, that's valuable data. I'm not going back, I said. I got what I needed. I know they're real, I know they're intelligent, that's enough. She studied me. Is it, though? You seem like someone who needs complete answers, not partial ones. She was right. Even as I said I wouldn't go back, I knew I was lying to myself. I'd go back, I'd keep seeking, because the alternative was spending the rest of my life wondering. If I did go back, I said slowly, if I tried to make contact again, what should I do? Be careful. These entities, whatever they are, they have capabilities far beyond ours. They can manipulate time, affect electronics, influence consciousness. You're at a severe disadvantage in any interaction. But what should I do? She thought about it. Be honest. Be open. Don't try to trick them or deceive them. They'll know. If you want answers, ask for them directly. Be clear about your intentions. Will they answer? Maybe, maybe not. But at least you'll have tried. We talked for another hour. She showed me her research, case files from other experiencers, patterns she'd identified. It was fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. As I was leaving, she gave me her card. If you do go back, she said, if you make contact again, I want to hear about it. This could be important research. I'll think about it. But I'd already decided I was going back one more time. I set everything up like before. Same location, same equipment, same time of night. But this time I also brought a notebook and pen. If they wanted to communicate, I wanted to be ready to record everything properly. I sat in my car and waited. Hours passed. I was starting to think they wouldn't show when at 4:15 in the morning, the EMF meters spiked. They were back. 3 lights in the distance, same as always. But this time they were moving differently, more deliberately. They formed a triangle in the sky, perfectly equilateral, and began rotating slowly. I got out of the car with my notebook. I didn't bother with the cameras this time. I knew they wouldn't capture what mattered. I walked toward the lights, and again they maintained distance. But this time, after I'd walked about 100 yards, they stopped retreating. They held their position, the triangle continuing its slow rotation. And then all 3 sent out beams of light. The beams met in the center of the triangle, forming a point of incredibly bright illumination. From that point, the small sphere emerged again. It floated toward me, and I felt that same presence in my mind. You have returned. Yes, I want to understand. Understanding requires trust. Do you trust? I thought about it. Did I trust these beings that had stolen time from me, that had invaded my thoughts, that had changed me in ways I didn't fully comprehend? I don't know. I answered honestly. But I'm willing to try. That is sufficient. The sphere came closer, within arm's reach now. The light it emitted was warm, not hot, just warm, like sunlight filtered through clouds. What do you want from us? I thought. Not want, need. Your species is changing. Soon you will face a choice. We prepare you for this choice. What choice? The choice all species face. To transcend or to remain. This was getting abstract, hard to follow. I don't understand. You will. When the time comes, you will remember. You will choose. That is why we study you, why we prepare you, why we change you. How many of us are you preparing? Enough. And if we choose wrong? A pause, longer this time. There is no wrong choice, only different paths. We show you the paths, you choose which to walk. The sphere began to retreat and I felt panic rising. I had so many more questions, so much I still didn't understand. Wait, I thought. Please, I need more information. You will have it when you are ready. When your species is ready. How will I know when I'm ready? You will know. And then, they were gone. The lights, the sphere, the presence in my mind, all of it vanished in an instant. I was alone again, under the stars, holding my notebook with nothing written in it because there had been no time to write. But I remembered everything. Every word, every thought, every sensation. And I understood, at least partially, what was happening. They weren't abducting us. They weren't harming us. They were preparing us for something. Something big enough that it required years of preparation, hundreds or thousands of people being slowly changed, made ready. I drove back to Amarillo as the sun rose, thinking about what Dr. Vasquez had said. This could be important research, but more than that, this could be important for humanity. Whatever choice we were being prepared for, whatever crossroads we were approaching, people needed to know about it. Not just researchers and experiencers, but everyone. I'm still driving trucks. Still making my runs through the Panhandle late at night. Sometimes I see lights in the distance and wonder if they're back, but so far they haven't returned. Maybe I've served my purpose. Maybe they got what they needed from me and moved on to others. Or maybe they're just waiting, watching, preparing me for that final encounter, the one where I'll finally understand everything. I don't know. And that uncertainty, that not knowing, used to drive me crazy. But I've learned to live with it. Because some questions don't have answers yet. Some mysteries take time to unravel. But I'll tell you this, I'm not afraid anymore. Whatever they are, wherever they come from, whatever they're preparing us for, I trust that when the time comes, when that choice is presented, I'll know what to do. We all will, and until then, I'll keep driving, keep watching the skies, keep remembering. Because that's what they need from us. Not fear, not worship, just remembrance, just readiness. The Panhandle is still dark at night. The highways still stretch on forever. The stars still look the same, but everything's different now. Because now I know we're not alone, and more importantly, I know we never were. They've been here all along, watching, preparing, waiting for us to be ready. And soon, maybe sooner than we think, we will be.